How are you doing, everybody? This is Kara Lovehart, and I'm going live to repeat an amazing event we did last Sunday. And it was very well received, and we did it online and in person here in York, PA at Firefly Hollow. And we forgot to hit the record button. So we were actually going to record that, and we didn't get to do that. So as upon request, I'm actually redoing this presentation today and this conversation about how we can really create lasting change through understanding our stress response, understanding ourselves from a holistic perspective. This isn't just mental mindset, but this is how the body piece can influence the mindset, the physiology, the chemistry, the brain chemistry, how that works, and how when you set goals for your life, whether it's a goal for business, for finances, for relationships, maybe it's weight loss, those New Year's resolutions, those health fitness goals, food, diet changes, whatever it is, that there's a huge missing piece that I know that really hasn't been talked about. And I find this information empowering, enlightening, and very supportive. So I'm really excited to share that with you here today. So if you haven't met me before, I'm Kara Lovehart. I'm a mind-body medium. So what that means is I work with people from a spiritual perspective. I am clairvoyant and I see auras. So part of my framework for all of my programs and classes is to help people understand how their own consciousness, which is what your aura is, your aura or electromagnetic energy field, which we'll talk about today, is actually an expression of you and where you are at in your own conscious development, your own consciousness and expression of who you are. And what I see in that when I work with coaching clients is I see where you might be blocking yourself, where you might have stuff that has come up in your characteristics in your day-to-day, or even in the physical body, and how those things from a mind and body perspective really play off of each other. There is really no separation in that. So all of the things I'll share today are related around that, but I love to go into the science of how our stress response affects our brain and our ability to think clearly, connect to creativity, intuition. So we'll go into that as well today. We're going to also talk about different holistic modalities and how they can support you, and understanding why, again, if you've set goals or found yourself to self-sabotage, give up, procrastinate, why that might be happening in your life. Because we really want people to be healthy, right? You want to meet your goals financially. You want to be able to find a relationship that's healthy for you, whether it's friend, platonic, or romantic. And all of these things are really intertwined. And the most fascinating thing I'm going to talk about today as well is that when we don't have our stress responses in check, the part of our brain that operates to see a holistic, integrative thinking, so the systems thinking where we see how things interconnect, does not actually work. And one of the reasons I feel strongly, in my opinion, that people don't understand truly what holistic integrative is. They might have a piece of it, right? Like mindset or nutrition, but they don't really fully see the connection. Number one is education, just not having the awareness or the experience to see how things interconnect, but also just how our brain functions when we're under stress response. And most of our culture is chronically under a stress response. And when we don't see the big picture. We don't see how things are interconnected. Our brain is more wired to move into black and white thinking for survival. So we're going to talk about that. So this is, again, going to be recording for those of you who did not get to join live or want to watch the replay and loved the event last week. So I encourage you, if you are in our online Mighty Networks, our Firefly Hollow Mighty Networks, this is going to be available for interaction. So you may be watching this as a replay on YouTube, or you may be a part of our online Mighty Networks community. That is a free community. You can join that. Just search Firefly Hollow Wellness in Mighty Networks if you have that app, or you can look in our website in our link tree for more information. And if you want to watch the recording and interact with other people, I encourage you to go in there, and we have like a $5 a month subscription. That's where you can connect with community and actually watch all the recordings. So I will encourage you to do that, because I'll have the handouts for this particular class. I have them here printed out. But if, of course, you're watching on YouTube Live, you may not be able to get the handouts. I'm going to just redirect you to the Mighty Networks to get access to that. All right. So if you are here in the chat, Tell me a little bit about who you are. If you're watching the replay, comment below and let us know what has your experience been with New Year's resolutions or making lifestyle change. I'd love to hear people who have had experiences being successful at it. What were you successful with? And what has been a challenge? And it's sometimes there is this one thing in our lives that we've been trying to change for years. And maybe we start to change it and we go back to the same pattern. So I'd love to hear if you have any experiences with that. And what do you hope to learn today out of this online offering? Let us know. So this recording is live. Sorry, this event is live and it's recorded during winter. And we had for years done this new year, new you thing. And I really feel that that is so overdone. And it's also one of those things that, as I learned along my journey, that our culture is very burned out and we don't need to push ourselves during this time of the year. It's a really good time for creating sustainable change during the winter months, where we're going inward. We have this place of introspection that we are going to bring self-awareness to who we are, why we are the way we are, what are our goals, why do we have these goals, and what might be blocking us to actually setting and making action steps on those goals. The difference is, instead of, fresh out the gate in the new year, trying to put your goals down and making action steps to make them all happen, or even maybe that one thing happen, sometimes the paving the way, tilling the soil, getting what the seeds are that you want to plant ready, and planning what you might need to do to water them consistently and make sure that these new goals or ideas or intentions actually grow. This is a really good time for doing that. And that is actually one of the reasons why, if you have set a New Year's intention or resolution, that it doesn't actually pan out for the most part. Now, 91% of New Year's resolutions fail. Now, I'm curious as why do you think that? Why do you think that 91% of them fail? The reason I think that people don't have a lot of readiness, they're not actually ready to make changes. We have this surface level idea of what we want to do and how we want to do it, but it may not be looking at what are the foundations that need to change first within ourselves, within our readiness, maybe our mindset, within our readiness, maybe our time readiness, our bandwidth. We may have a change we want to make in our lives, but we don't have the bandwidth to make it. And we don't have the resources. We don't have the people. Maybe you don't have the babysitter to go to the gym on a regular basis and actually make that goal a reality. There's also this surface level goal setting that we can do, that we can set, that are based on what we feel we should be based on our society and our culture. And we are seeing a big shift into moving into our individuality. Who are we? Not who we were born or we were patterned to be. And instead of these maybe surface level goals that are based on a sense of status or success, right? Even though status and success are amazing, but it's what other people's experience or perspective of status success is. And we want to look at what are the actual desires that you have as an individual. And that takes some surface or deeper than surface looking and introspection into the self. If I were to ask you about what your goals and dreams are, and you gave me a whole list of things, I would go through each of them and we'd actually inquire a little bit deeper as to where did that come from? Why do you want that? Because there's no wrong reason why you want it or don't want a thing. But when you can get to the root of, maybe if you have a desire, say one day to become a lawyer, right? Is that desire based on your perspective, other people you believe are successful because they're a lawyer, or your parents or your friend or your sister or someone you look up to is a lawyer or something like that? Is it something that actually is truly who you are and what you were made to be, what your purpose is? And that takes a lot of deprogramming what the culture has taught you that you need to be or not to be enough. And so that's another big reason why goals are not successful, because if you're setting a goal from a place of not enough, or from a place of setting a goal for someone else, for society. And that's something that until we become self-aware and we know thyself, we learn who we are truly, and that takes a lot of deprogramming, then we're not going to necessarily reach those goals, because on an unconscious level, on a subconscious level, on a maybe a soul level, if you want to say, there is no momentum and energy and life force behind that goal. Because on some level, you really don't want that goal. It is what society wants for you. So that's another reason why New Year's resolutions or even just setting goals can fail. Cognitive dissonance. This is the mismatch between our actions and our values. And this is where we have this discomfort, when maybe we have an old way of being. Maybe the old way of being is not being healthy or fit or having movement on a regular basis. And there is a mindset, there is a way you operate. Maybe you don't move as much. And then there's, of course, mindset around what you may look like in workout clothes, how you feel about yourself. Then there is the actual program in which how your nervous system functions that's not used to the movement, maybe not used to a new environment. If you start going to a fitness center or working with a coach, that your whole nervous system is going to have to then create change. And change is not comfortable. We are habit-seeking mammals. We like to be in the same circumstances. It's comfortable. So there can be a dissonance there. And also there can be things that just don't make sense to you based on your worldview of what health and wellness and fitness is. And maybe you get involved in a new group that has a new ideology or a new philosophy. And maybe that philosophy is very healthy and actually really will work for you. But because you're so used to an old philosophy, an old belief that this doesn't make any sense, I can't even fathom that you have this cognitive dissonance. Your brain will not allow you to see a new perspective because there's a limitation there. So James Clear, if you have ever read the Atomic Habits book, there is a really great quote from that book. It's, "Habits fail when there is no system in place to support them. Successful change focuses on identity shifts." And this is what I'm talking about. Whenever I work with people, the reason they get stuck is because they're stuck in their identity. There's a sense of who they are, who they think they are, that relates to their day-to-day structure, that relates to how they relate to themselves, their addictions, their play, their confidence levels or lack of that, their lack of ability to be motivated and continue forward with discipline, their lack of self-love, being able to balance giving and receiving, and their inability to be authentic, like fully who they are and express that. And then also balance themselves between like their intuitive sense of who they are and logic. There's all these components that are really important, that you can get stuck in a part of who you are. And there's nothing wrong with who you are as a person now, right? But if you have a goal to be someone that is fit or more financially sound, or someone that's more social, not as introverted, whatever your goal is, if you have locked down to an identity of, this is just who I am. I just am that person that's always going to be poor. I'm always going to be struggling with my weight. It came from my family. My family's introverted. We just don't do those things. My family never travels. We always stay in the same town. Those things are identities. And that's the difference between a fixed mindset, which is really operating from the space of, this is who I am, this is what I do, versus a growth mindset. Now, these are concepts that you can look up on the internet, but my connection point to the growth mindset and the fixed mindset is that when we are in a space of nervous system dysregulation and stress, and we'll talk about the stress response, it's going to be really, really hard for you. I don't say not necessarily for you, but it can be very challenging for individuals to get out of a fixed mindset, because a fixed mindset is a natural response sometimes when we're trying to control what feels out of control. And we don't know how to control our nervous system response to stress, to things that are happening in our lives, to things we're perceiving out in the world when it comes to our government, the economy, our neighbor, traffic. What are the things that you can't control that heighten your stress response? Your spouse, your children, you can name a list of things. If you have dysregulation in your nervous system response, your brain will automatically start to shut down, and we can get in this black and white thinking. We can get more in a fixed mindset because we want to control things, and we don't have the hardware online in our nervous system to start seeing things, how they connect, how everything is a possibility for growth. Everything's an opportunity to learn. Everything's an opportunity that's bringing us abundance or another lesson that can get us to our goal. That is the growth mindset. And I've heard people for years talk about fixed mindset, growth mindset. It's amazing. It's a great concept and it works. But what happens if you try and try and try to have a growth mindset? You know you're supposed to have a growth mindset, and you just seem like you can't do it. You keep failing. I'm doing all these affirmations. I'm doing whatever it is. That is the point that I tell people. There is something else going on here that is not just about mental mindset. There is other components that from a holistic perspective, when I see people, I can say, I think this might be what might be going on. Let's explore this. And this is why I really feel that this power of reflection right now for winter, this is the magic time for us to have a space where we can pause. We can get into a internal slow down state. If we allow ourselves, that we can help get into the mechanisms of who we are, why we are the way we are, and maybe what we can do to change it. And I also think that one of the biggest things that changes during the winter season, because there's less light, especially if you're in the northern hemisphere right now, it's winter. Southern hemisphere it's summertime there, right? So if you are someone that is really listening to your natural rhythms, I encourage you to do so if you're not. The natural rhythms of this winter season for most people is to slow down, go inward, hibernate, cozy up. That's it. And we have less light. So that's going to affect our circadian rhythms. We're going to get tired. We want to go to sleep earlier because there's less light during the day. And also just how light affects our state of consciousness and the different brain waves that we have. That is absolutely a really great way for you to hack the natural rhythm, if you want to say hack it, the natural rhythms of your body. And you're naturally going to be more likely to be in a nice reflective state. So giving you an example, when we have bright blue sky in the middle of midday in summer, right? That particular frequency of light, when the sunlight is shining through that particular day and time, right? That is a really activating blue light frequency. And we have biophoton receptors in our eyes. When we receive that particular frequency of light, it puts us in beta brainwaves. Beta brainwaves is active, focused, let's get stuff done. Think I drank a bunch of Starbucks coffee and now I can do all the things, right? If that is the mode of operation in the summertime, when we have that frequency and intensity of light that's hitting our eye, when the light starts to change, we get dimmer light towards the evening. The evening light gets more orange and yellows or softer. That starts to activate the natural melatonin production. And that happens from the pineal gland and also the eyes, the biophoton receptors. That's all connected. And that helps you get into more of a relaxed state. You start to shift your brain waves down into alpha and maybe more into theta, which is a deep meditation. So that is the time when our conscious mind, our beta brainwaves, can then start to relax into alpha, relaxed state. That's kind of like when you're watching TV and you're just there. That is you're more of a suggested state and you're more in touch with your subconscious mind. That's how you can change mindset. When we pause and reflect and get into that altered state, that's when the magic happens. And I think that's one thing that we have a hard time getting into, that altered state in our culture that has nervous system dysregulation, and we're on overdrive. So just thinking about the mechanisms of light and the seasons and the circadian rhythms as they shift, there are more times during the winter season that there's less light. And even though your culture, our American culture, if you're watching in North America, is making you, pushing you possibly to do more, to keep going, that is not natural, and we know that. And so it's about finding ways within the system of which you're living currently to allow yourself to start to naturally flow with the circadian rhythms that would be more natural to winter, and allowing yourself to go inward. So you're going to be much easier for you to get into an altered state and a relaxed state, which is really a really great way to actually look at what are some of the reasons why you haven't been able to change or what might be blocking you. Okay, and then we're going to talk about the science of change first. So your identity emerges out of your habits. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. This is by James Clear. So he's the author of Atomic Habits. Now, when I talk about this from a perspective as a mind-body medium, so looking at the energy field, yes, beliefs are not just self-talk, but it's even beyond that. So let's go back to when you were a baby and you did not have a sense of language. So the first thing that we might start looking around and seeing our mother, a dog, we start to see and experience these interactions with things, and we don't know what they're called yet, but we still have an interaction with a thing, and we can have an associative memory with that thing. If we got bit by a dog or scratched by a cat, there's an associative memory in that experience of that wasn't good, that wasn't safe. That starts to lay down if you don't let that go as a one-time experience of getting, scratched by a cat or falling down a step or whatever. It starts to create an associative experience in your belief system that dogs or cats or whatever the experience is may not be safe. And that can, of course, stay with us. And that's before we even have language. Now put language on top of that, and you might overhear your mother or your father talking about how the neighbor dog bit them, right? Maybe you didn't have the experience, but then you start thinking every time you see this particular type of dog, right? Then you're getting this, oh my gosh, those are not safe. There are so many experiences that I'm sure you can name one of things that you were taught, especially when you started learning language and understanding what things were, that these words, these concepts that are communicated through utterances, through sounds as humans, we exchange information this way. It became a thought, and then it eventually became a belief, and then it eventually became actions and behaviors, and then became a habit, and then it became your personality. And so when we have an experience, if we then take that experience and we see it as something that is absolutely true, and it's going to be true for all time, that creates a belief. Right now, I have a belief that's true for all time that gravity exists. And that's totally a collective belief that we all have. There are also people out there that have a belief maybe in that they will never get sick. That they're very healthy. Maybe they have a high immune system. They hardly ever get sick. And maybe it's true for them because that's their experience. So in that particular belief system, for them, they are creating a little bit of that with their beliefs and their reality. So when we have a specific type of way that we're talking to ourselves or not talking to ourselves or perpetuating beliefs, this does perpetuate neural pathways and basically patterns of beliefs in the brain. And this can be something as simple as when you are waking up and walking throughout your day, maybe you are experiencing stress or low energy, and everything around you is another thing that could be stressful for you. And you start to perceive it that way. And then you start to talk about it that way. And then you start to experience more of that. And I think that you may, if you really take a moment to look at your life and see either you or someone you know that has a perpetuation of their beliefs, that they keep creating this self-perpetuating reality. This is where I say that the science of change and how it works with beliefs, we need to look at how we can change beliefs. Not just from saying affirmations, but we need to look at where did they come from, how can we shift them, and how can we start talking differently about our reality, and how can we make different actions. And that can be really helpful and supportive for creating full change. So let's talk about the nervous system. When we are feeling very stressed, overwhelmed, stressed, we can shut down and have this perspective and this mindset of, I won't do it. And this is actually a defense mechanism because your nervous system is maybe too overstimulated at that time that it actually needs to just chill out. And we can have it be something that's actually happening, or say it's that you have, you are supposed to make a public speech somewhere for a wedding. You're the best man or the bridesmaid, you are the maid of honor, and you're like, I have to go and do this, but you have a belief that's really I'm going to be humiliated. It's all going to go this way. So I think that is an example of, we didn't even have the experience yet, but that belief and that energy exchange that we have with our reality of what we perceive could happen will completely already shut us down. And this is where, like I talked about, fixed mindset and growth mindset. The fixed mindset is when the nervous system response has taken over, or we're perceiving that it's going to be bad, that we already start stressing ourselves before we get there. And we will continue in this fixed mindset, which is, I won't do it. I can't do it. I don't want to do it. I've always been this way. My family's been this way. I can never lose weight. I'll never be financially wealthy. I'll never find a person. Men are always horrible to me. Women are always this way. Whenever there's an always story, and this is how it always is, that is when you're in fixed mindset. And what I see in people's energy field, when this starts to happen, a fixed mindset will start to not only make the aura dimmer, the colors started to get a little bit dingy, and then the energy starts to get smaller and sucked in. People aren't as vibrant with their energy field or their aura. And what happens is, it starts to create rigidity in the system, rigidity in the energy field. And that starts to create, and we won't even go into what that does to the physical body and stress. But from a physical perspective, as a licensed massage therapist, what I start to see in people's tissue, just their connective tissue and their muscle tissue, is it starts to become more rigid. The more shut down, the more rigid of the thinking and the patterning in the mindset, the more the body will reflect that. And that's when we want to, of course, utilize, we'll talk about this later, not just tools for mindset shifting, but physical tools like yoga, stretching, movement, massage therapy, and specific types of massage therapy specifically to break up those rigid physical patterns that now manifested or have shown up in the physical body. And so I won't do it. I can't do it. I don't want to do it. This can also show up as inflammation in the body. So the rigidity of just shutting down, that's a rigid body mindset. The frustration that someone might have, if you know someone that is very angry, frustrated, irritated on a regular basis, we tend to see more inflammation in that body system. And inflammation can be also contributed by environmental factors in food, diet, lifestyle, but stress is also a big contributing factor to inflammation, specifically anger and frustration. If you are not an angry person, you don't feel like you're frustrated, but maybe you're someone that anger was never a safe emotion to express and you push it down. This is associated with people, when I've seen people who have I use the word constipated anger, over time, if that solidifies, I hate to see this, but this is the people that end up having to get their gallbladders removed. There's a high correlation from this mind-body perspective. And of course, diet, lifestyle factors are also involved. But from a mind-body perspective, what I see in the energy field and the aura and how that psychological, spiritual component is solidifying in the body, there's no ability to express anger. We see gallbladder issues. We see liver issues more with anger, frustration, that I can't do this. Why did they do this to me? This will never happen. This fixed mindset and this fight consciousness. This fight consciousness is also in a fixed mindset. It's not necessarily in an open mindset. You can't open yourself up to help, to new perspectives when your fists are balled up like this. This is not an open perspective. This is I'm defending my identity. I'm defending who I think I am. I don't feel safe. Why, whatever it may be. And there may be actual logical reasons why you don't feel safe. It may be financial reasons. It may be domestic issues. There may be stuff where you live. There may be things that are going on. But that type of consciousness, the stress consciousness, is not going to be conducive to actually getting to make changes. So if you're one of those people, you're like, I've done affirmations for years, all this stuff, none of this holistic baloney works. I'm like, okay, but let's talk about the neuroscience here. Let's not leave out anything, because holistic doesn't just mean, talking to some psychic medium like myself, getting Reiki and talking about your aura. It also includes, because holistic is connecting all the dots, the science, your blood work, what's going on with your environment and what might be causing inflammation. What are your biomarkers with your blood panel analysis? What's going on with your home? Like, these are really important things that holistic really means looking at all of it. We're not going to just look at the spiritual woo-woo stuff. We're going to look at the physical, physiological stuff going on, psychological stuff going on. And of course, every person on a holistic team has their expertise and their scope of practice in that area. So if we move into this growth mindset, it always starts with a question. The best way to start down regulating the nervous system and switching over from a mindset perspective into more rest and digest, getting out of this nervous system dysregulation and this stress mode that creates the fixed mindset, is to start asking yourself a question. And we can ask the question of, how could I do it? How do I do it? How is this possible? Anything that is a question that can start to create a shift in the mindset, that questioning is not rigid of I can't, I won't, it's not possible. The question goes, I wonder how it could be possible. And when we start questioning, the brain and our circuitry starts to make associative pathways of a creative thinking. We start to think and our brain goes, okay, what about that? What about that? And that's where we start to be able to see different perspectives versus black and white thinking that comes along with a high stress response and a fixed mindset. Questioning opens up the doorway. I'll try to do that. I can do that. I will do that. So those are just the mindset pieces. Now let's talk again a little bit more about these stress responses. You can't create from stress. You create from alignment. Now, taking that note, I'm going to take a moment for alignment. Take a little sip of my tea. But how do you think about that? I think our culture is, burnout is a household term, and I myself have experienced my fair share of burnout. And I'm really grateful to have, well, I was grateful during the time I had having burnout, knowing quite consciously that I was in burnout. My clinic, over the pandemic, many organizations and businesses went through a lot of changes, and we lost 4 leadership positions in one 3-month period. And me wanting to save my business and CPR it and bring it back to life, put myself into the position of doing all those things. Benefit of it is I learned an amazing tool set from the Flow Research Collective. It's an amazing program if you're a business owner out there, how to be productive. Regulate your nervous system. Make sure you can do everything you can to make sure you're down regulating your system to keep yourself in check. That was an amazing resource. But I found that more and more people after the pandemic had more higher stress response from the collective trauma of what the pandemic has done for our consciousness. And we are really just animals. Like, we're animals with an evolved brain. We have this higher neocortex, which is the blessing of why we've created this device in which I'm talking to you remotely from somewhere in the world, right? Why we have these amazing things like music, why our human consciousness has created so much. But we still have the lower parts of the brain that do put us into this animal mode that is to help protect us and keep us alive. And the nervous system responses are absolutely in direct correlation to why our consciousness as a collective still is staying stuck. Why we see people who are perfectly smart and perfectly amazing, and they could have like multiple PhDs. Doesn't matter how much academic work or certificates or training they have had. Everyone is human. And when you have that stuck nervous system response, could be, let's think of someone who has, with perception, if they had all the things, right? They're a PhD, they're a doctor, whatever. What if they just went through a divorce and they're having a custody battle with their child? That stress response is going to hit them. And if they don't have regulation tools and techniques working with, and they're not going to be perfect at it, what can happen is the brain will start to dysregulate. The executive functioning go down. So that's time management, resource management, money management, the ability to be on time. So if you're a business owner out there, if you have people you live with in your home or anyone, think of people in your life that the higher their stress response gets, the less they're executively functioning. Maybe then we start to see behaviors like eating, smoking, drinking alcohol, any behaviors or substances that come in to help regulate or try to regulate the system from a perspective that is just temporary, not actually going and figuring out how to manage the stress response, and it's individual for each person. And then we will see the individual start to have dysregulation in the way their communication happens, communication breakdowns, because the hippocampus, the part of the brain that does support us in learning, memory recall, and memory formation, actually can shrink. And especially long-term stress response, chronic stress. And then we could even say chronic stress and trauma are kind of doing the same thing to the nervous system. Trauma like PTSD to that extreme, but looking at, say you don't have PTSD, I guarantee you, if you were in stress response on a regular basis and have not regulated it, or have no idea how to, or aren't even aware of how stressed you have been, which is very common. Think about anyone you know that you think they're stressed a lot, and then you say, can I help you out? I'm not stressed. It is so common because when you're in that mode, you're just trying to survive. The self-awareness turns down, that volume knob turns down, and there's this tunnel vision that starts to come on. That's absolutely what's happened. I don't care how awakened or enlightened or how many PhDs someone has. We're all animals, but still is what happens to the body if there is a threat response. Now, someone like the Dalai Lama, who has meditated for many years, there's this training of the brain that you can train your stress response. This is why biohacking is really important. Different things you can use to regulate yourself. Then you can actually override this older part of the brain that's been there to keep us alive. It's still there to keep us alive. But then you can start to create a much more deeper connection to your higher consciousness. And this is the neocortex, the part of the brain that helps us have higher level thinking, innovative, creative thinking. This is where you can solve problems that this idea came to me out of the blue, and now I figured out a way to pay off my mortgage in 6 years versus 30, or something like that happens. And this is where people start to experience synchronicity, the hand of God, the law of attraction working for them, their prayers being answered. I don't care what people call it. To me, when I see that happening in someone's energy field as a medium, I see them expanding their consciousness of trust. The physiological nervous system, where what's happening in the brain is they're shutting down more of the older parts of the brain. I mean, they're still working, but they're not in hyper overdrive. The prefrontal cortex, which is about decision making, is actually working and functioning. And they're able to retain information, recall information, communicate much more clearly because they're centered. And that centered, peaceful space is usually what creates this flow state. Flow state meaning you get in this space where you just have these intuitive, creative thoughts, or you just know what to do. You're able to get work done without it being a stressful experience. And then you're able to regulate and go back for a little moment, take a break, and then go back and work and get whatever your workflow is done. The high stress nervous system response that we see in our culture is exactly what I believe is stopping our consciousness from evolving collectively. And if you are someone that doesn't understand your power of choice, if you don't understand the power of us being animals with this fight, flight, fawn, freeze response, but also knowing that we have a more evolved part of the brain that we can use the power of choice and self-awareness, and most importantly, education about what these things do to the system and knowing what to do to stop them, then you're really stuck. You can stay stuck in this feeling of victim consciousness, or that life happens to me, versus when you're aware of this, you have the power of choice. Life happens through me. You have the power to make a decision to shift it. Now, the choice is the part where people can sometimes, no matter how much you learn, you're out there, you are getting information from every media source. You're buying all these books and podcasts, and you just are a sponge for information. There comes a time when you may have to recognize that you've gotten so many books and for years you've done so many things, but how's it working out for you? Are you actually using the sources to create change and lasting change? Because one of these stress responses, fawn, freeze, fight, flight, one of those could also be one of your reactions when your nervous system is overstimulated. You have so many books, so many podcasts, so many programs we've looked at, and you always think on some level, this is going to be the one thing that's going to save me. That's still a victim consciousness. This is going to be a thing. And how much are you actually implementing the tools that was taught to you versus, well, maybe that's not the thing. The fear of missing out, FOMO, like, well, maybe it's that program over there. Maybe it's that person. They're going to help me. Like, there is this consciousness that is only coming for the most part from this stress response that doesn't see how it's all connected and maybe moving into that growth mindset. Remember, I said a fixed mindset is for more this fight, flight, fawn, freeze response. And that's when we shut down the energy system, the chakra system gets misaligned, all of that stuff's connected. But when we start to downregulate the stress, we can create from alignment. We can absolutely start to have that growth mindset. And that's where synchronicity, miracles, all that stuff will start happening to people. And that's where my magic and my passion is, because we're so close. We're having this evolutionary like pressure, right? Like there is pressure when change happens. When transformation happens to people, transformation is not something that is easy. It's just like a baby being born, being birthed. It is a wild, chaotic experience. But once that transformation from water, the element of water in that womb to air, you're birthed into this life, into this completely different element. There's no water surrounding you anymore. There's light going in your eyeballs. That is a very traumatic experience, being born. And transformation is something that creates pressure, and the pressure creates this environment for life to thrive. And if you look back on all life we are created in this kind of pressure system. There's even studies that are related to, this is actually something I'm reading in our book for the month, book club of the month. It's a Book of Joy by the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. Research, we're talking, I forget which book, which chapter it was in, but they're talking about how all life has to have stress to create change. If we wouldn't have stress, we wouldn't be alive. Stress on the nervous system genetically affects us and helps us evolve. So let's look at our bodies don't know the difference sometimes between different kinds of stresses. So our body doesn't know the difference between anxiety and excitement. So it's a similar stress response in the body. And that's something where with a simple awareness of how you're feeling and shifting the stress response from a mindset of, oh my gosh, I'm really stressed, I'm really anxious, this is going to be this, and then you get on a story of what's going to happen. Just being aware of a heightened sense in your nervous system that you can move from a place in this mindset of, oh my gosh, this is totally going to be a horrible experience, to I'm just excited right now. Like I feel heightened. My nervous system is excited. We don't need to know and go on the story about why it's excited. It's just a matter of, do you want it to be less excited? Is it overwhelming your system right now? You need to take some breaths, or you want to continue being excited and pretend you're at a rock concert and go with it and allow that energy to pull you forward. That is still how stress can be perceived. The power of perception can shift it one way or the other. Now let's talk about the nervous system response. So fight is usually when you have this stress response of you're easily angry, you get irritated. If something stresses you out, you're the one that wants to defend yourself or your identity, or you don't feel safe. So you're trying to create this wall around you, protection. And it could be psychological. It could be you might not show anger with your voice or your actions, but that fight mode could still create this wall and this consciousness of it's us against them, myself against this, and you don't feel safe in general. The flight consciousness is more when something stresses you out, you would rather just run. I don't want to be involved with this. I want to get away from here. It's anxious. I need to get out. When you're a fawner, this is where a lot of people in the healing profession are involved. This is the fawners, people pleasers. You're all people pleasers. Guys, I am a fawner and a fighter. We all have these stress responses. We're not always just one of them. But my default mode is fawn, fight. And there's stories behind why. That's my history. But the self-awareness around that is when I can recognize what it is that's bringing up this nervous system response, I have tools that I can down-regulate it, thus get my consciousness back online, my tether directly to source, because everyone has that, whatever you call it, higher power, God, goddess, whatever. Your consciousness, even if you're atheist, connection to your neocortex that will help you have innovative thinking. It doesn't matter what language we're using, guys. It is all this same framework of we need to evolve and expand our consciousness. And we cannot do that from animal fight, flight response. That is the stress response for survival. So the fawners, the people pleasers, this is where something starts to feel stressful. We want to make it all right. If you go into a room and it feels like someone was fighting or whatever, how can we make it better? We want to make sure someone's not upset. Let's help them feel better. Let's soothe them. There is a lot of crossing boundaries, giving up of your own time and your own value, sometimes to help other people feel not stressed, because when they're stressed, you're stressed. So on some level, you're doing it to help people, but on some level, it's also self motivated because you don't want to feel that stress. So you'd rather just, let's make sure everything was okay. And that's not from a space of alignment. There is coming to help someone from a space of alignment that's not a fawner or a people pleaser. So when you are aware of that stress response, it doesn't mean that you'll stop wanting to help people. It means you'll help people from an aligned state, from a space where your nervous system, your energy system is in full blossom, open flower love and connection with boundaries. And you're able to then show up, not burn yourself out, not become depleted, not become overly sensitized as an empathic person or someone that this is like, now I'm feeling everything of what you're absorbing all their stuff. And I work with a lot of fawners, people pleasers, healers, whatever. This is all kind of a same vein of patterns that we get in. And it does wire us, this stress response wires us to be on input mode. So we're scanning the environment to try to figure out what's wrong. The blessing for me, and mine went to an extreme because I had an out-of-body near-death sort of experience, and I had lead poisoning. So these are all things that put me in altered states of consciousness and heighten my nervous system to the point where I, being on input mode, don't just pick up emotions, but as a medium, I'm picking up a lot of things are not just nonverbal body cues. These are information that I don't even have to look at someone's face, or I can talk to them on the phone, or they can give me a name. I've never seen their face, don't know what they look like, so I'm not even reading cues. This is sensitivity to the collective information field of consciousness. And that's something that was very debilitating for me at a time. So a lot of people I work with are people that have been debilitated by their sensitivity. Usually it's a trauma that's happened to them. So I work with them in tandem with other psychotherapists or counselors and other types of modalities so that they can heal that oversensitive system. But that fawn response will still stay intact. And then that was where we deplete ourselves. We're not making enough money. We are giving away so much of our power because we want to help everyone else feel safe. So that's the fawn response. The freeze response is more of an extreme response that we see happen if you have been, if you have a strong startle reflex, or if you're someone that you've experienced something very traumatic to your perspective. That can be something that can just be overstimulation of lights or sounds or something like that, a sudden noise. Something in your journey or multiple things that your response was to just, you can't move. You just feel immobilized. And I know for some people who are trying to meet their goals, thinking about trying to meet their goals, trying to plan an execution steps or actions to change their behaviors and their character and their body, whatever it is, there can be this overthinking. There's a lot of activity in there, but the response is you just don't feel like you can do it. It's too much. And from a very extreme perspective, let's just think about if a wild animal would come out and jump at you and grab you up, and you had the fight response would be to hit it and try to, fight back. The flight response would be to run away. The fawn response would be try to, you wouldn't do that with the tiger necessarily. Like, let's pet the tiger and make it be fine and go to sleep, But the freeze response is you just can't move. And your body is trying to help you in mechanism survival, because if you are picked up by a predator and your body becomes rigid and limp, the predator may take you back to its den or wherever and just leave you because it might think you're dead. It's going to eat you later. So that's a really interesting primal response to just freeze. And this happens to people who've been through extreme trauma. It's another thing that happens when you're about to get into a car accident. The thalamus, which is a part of the brain that orients us to space and time and to our bodies, will actually start to create this space where we are not aware and we completely cannot feel a thing. This is where people say that they flew out the windshield and then they were in the hospital later. They didn't feel anything. It's a great mechanism our brain has, so we're not actually in pain. But then there are some people that when they get in that freeze stress response, they're stuck in that. They're very aware of what's going on. Their eyes are maybe moving around too, or maybe they are staring, but they have a lot of a consciousness of what's going on inside the body, but they cannot move. And that is a response that can really struggle with feeling empowered. And we usually work with that from an energy perspective of there needs to be a lot of allowance, consent, power of choice from that response, and the ability to create movement, because what happens in the body, it will get more frozen. One of the classes I teach is a trauma-informed massage therapy class for chronic stress and trauma, and we talk about these different nervous system responses, and from a perspective of what type of modalities, what type of massage to work with the different systems. Because whether you're fight, flight, fawn, freeze, you're going to have potentially a differences in your tissue and where it becomes tight or rigid. Like immobility of the joints, connective tissue is more of a freeze response, but it can happen with any of the responses. We're not all just one, we're a combination, and we all have a different unique imprint of our physical body and how it holds on to stress. But point is, you can't create from stress. Law of attraction, prayers, New Year's resolutions, whatever it is, you have to have alignment. And that's why I think that this is a big thing that's been missing from the world, I guess, in understanding how these things are connected. Now, the HeartMath Institute is one of my favorite organizations that is doing research on not just the heart and the brain, but how the heart has an electromagnetic field. And as a medium, I am always excited when I can find more information to support people in understanding that, yeah, auras exist, the electromagnetic fields exist, but did you know that they can measure the electromagnetic field of the heart? When we regulate our emotions, according to the HeartMath Institute, we create this internal coherence in the heart rhythm that they can actually map out. And that not only benefits our personal health when we're in a state of heart coherence, but it helps radiate into the world around us. It influences the environment around us. And I like that they're doing research on this, because we can think and send love and pray for people and be in a really good positive state when we're around people, but still people think that that's a little nonsense. And I teach that absolutely your heart rhythm coherence, when you're in a space of coherence, your heart is calm, it's peaceful, it's feeling abundant, joyful, gratitude. It's this space that creates a shift and a ripple effect throughout your entire energy field. And it affects your physiology. It improves sleep. It supports your stress response, lowers cortisol levels. All of this is associated with heart coherence. But it also will then balance this communication between the heart and the brain. The heart actually forms in utero before the brain fully develops. When the heart actually has an intelligence system of its own that it can sense. When they've done testing with the HeartMath Institute, they can pick up information intuitively. The heart responds to certain pictures that they were sending these research participants to before the brain registers what's going on. And that's where this woo-woo of intuition is something that I think that our head-based, logical, academic, research-based consciousness in our collective has been a little bit short-sighted. And now we're starting to understand more of that, this philosophy of everything's connected. We can't just put things into little parts. But think about this from a perspective of what I shared before, that if we're in a state of fight, flight, fawn, freeze, stress response, we don't feel safe, consciously or unconsciously, whether we have PhDs or not, especially if we have PhDs. If you're someone who's a researcher and you are still basing the scientific method of what you've been learned in school, right? But what if you are able to regulate your nervous system and have the neocortex, part of the brain, this higher consciousness, start to connect the dots and have innovative thinking. Think of another way to research or study something that we didn't think of before. If we're not down regulating it, no matter how many PhDs we got, we are having, maybe from the old school way of Newtonian physics, where we break everything down into its parts, which is part of our consciousness. We needed to understand things, how they worked from parts. That's how we can build computer systems. We model a lot of the things in medicine and computers based off of things we see in the real world. And we understand it from breaking it down to parts, little individual gears, how it all works. But now we're at this evolution in our consciousness where we need to see how things, not just from their individual parts, but how they're all interconnected. And I see this as a fascinating reflection mirroring our expansion of our consciousness, of how it's not just about the brain, it's about the heart, and how the heart and the brain, when they're in coherence together, that's when you have not just a mental intellectualizing, but you have an intuitive, creative nature, this wisdom, that it is very much more where we have this sense of, oh, I just got that idea, I don't know how, inspired action. And this is where I think that we can create not just change in our individual lives, but if that individual choice in your life affects your business, affects what you create, affects the way you parent, affects the way you interact with the world, that is huge. That will start to influence and affect the collective. And especially if the science shows that your heart, in a space of coherence with an electromagnetic field that can be measured up to 10 feet away from the body, can influence and create heart coherence in someone within 10 feet or less that's interacting with your heart field. And you don't have to say a word to them. You could be holding a place of compassion and love and stillness, and that person's in fight, flight, fawn, freeze, stress response, and their heart is incoherent, so it's not coherent. You can be in their presence and possibly over time entrain or influence their heart coherence. This is how collective consciousness, when you do your own work, your own self-awareness, your own internal inventory, and find out what are your triggers for your stress response, this is where we can create change, not just for ourselves, but within the world. And this is where I say, healers, heal thyself. Healers are always wanting to help everybody else and everybody else first. But the answer that's more effective is going in and finding heart coherence, finding balance and alignment in your energy. And that includes step by step, depending on your goals, that includes your lifestyle, your sleep, your spiritual health, self-awareness, what you're eating, who you're interacting with. It's components and pieces that build, but it does start with you need to save you. There is a milestone that healers will go through, and that they will burn themselves out until they realize they have to heal or save themselves. If not, a lot of times I see them struggle with trying to create this, the people-pleasing fawn effect, trying to create love and joy and peace and making everyone else happy. And that burns out the system. It's not sustainable. So HeartMath Institute research on heart-brain coherence, this is how we can support emotion regulation and clear decision-making, and how I think we can really use these principles to shift our consciousness and how we do things in the world, even how we do things in science. Not this black and white thinking, but more of this collective systems-based thinking that can come online and be more innovative, especially in the scientific field. And I think it's important to come from both sides, because we have very spiritual-based, faith-based thinkers that shun and think that science is just too limiting and it's shutting down potentials for spirit. And science says that spirituality and psychic mediums like myself aren't real, right? I think that's also a limitation, and that's fear. That's like, this is identity solidification. Like, I want to make sure that I'm right, that my belief system, no matter what it is, faith-based, non-religious based, whatever, I need to be right, because if it's something that's I'm not right, maybe it's not true. And then there's this comes back to fear, and then it triggers the stress response again. Even from that perspective, I think a truly holistic perspective is seeing the spiritual, the things that are beyond what we can perceive with our current scientific instruments and our own consciousness. So we only have 5 senses. Some of us who are lucky have more intuitive senses. We have more than 5. But that is a whole perspective of reality and consciousness that is just right there. But then if we limit it just to science, then we're still seeing limited perspective. So they need to come together, in my perspective, to create more of a whole. And I think we have to do that through, no matter where we're coming from, understanding and down-regulating our stress response. So this quote is these 2 quotes are from Stephen Covey. Sow a thought, reap an action. Sow an action, reap a habit. sow a habit, reap character, and sow a character, reap destiny. The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. I think that when people try to make change, they try to make too many changes all at once, and then they really usually fall off the wagon. So we want to start with one potential action that we have to change our thoughts around to make sure the cognitive dissonance is not there for whatever action step we're trying to create change for. And then those little steps really create the long-standing changes. I have a lot of examples from other people in my life. And I'll give an example from my journey. I think because I have been determined to embody my radical love of myself, and showing myself radical love, meaning not talking negatively about myself. Like, that has been a journey. And because of that, I think I've moved from a place of trying to do all the things all at once and doing it more one step at a time, and losing over 100 pounds. This is part of my journey, going from living with a partner who was more abusive to living with an amazing partner, and having challenges with my son, being a parent, and having more of a connected, cohesive relationship. Even financial changes, even in my business. I would have never run a business with the confidence levels I had, or the lack of confidence levels I had years ago. And there's a lot of things that were involved, but for the most part, it had to do with aligning my energy. Because the mindset piece and changing your thoughts and beliefs is one part of it, but you can change your beliefs, but not change your chemistry that's continuing to feed an old pattern, an old neural pathway. So for example, I'll give you a really good practical example. I quit eating sugar because sugar was one of the things that triggered my stress response. It triggered inflammation in my body. It also was a habit and a pattern that I would do whenever I was very stressed. So when I stopped eating sugar, years go by, and whenever I fall off the wagon and I would eat sugar again, I normally was very practical and prosperity minded and happy and joyful, optimistic. When I would fall off the wagon, a couple years later, and I did a little bit of binging with sugar, it was such a pattern in my consciousness in the past that when I would have that type of chemistry in my body, that my mind would then start having dreams at night about old ways of being, about people who used to be in my life and the type of consciousness relationships those were. So it triggered an old response, an old neural pathway memory, associative memories in my consciousness. And then it started to create the inflammation response. And then my mindset and my thinking started to go back in that old set of the whole reality, the whole perspective created a whole different reality. So that's one example of how it's not just mindset. It can be food as well. It can be your energy. It can be the unconscious mind. It can be how you hold yourself, how you carry yourself, your physical posture, where you're holding connective tissue congestion, like I talked about earlier. But the main thing is to keep the main thing when you're creating change. I just feel like this time of hibernation and inward space that we're having here in the wintertime, which is why I'm recording this so you can watch it as many times as you want, to really get this foundation of why change is sustainable for some people and not sustainable for others. And that actually there's no transformation happening at all. It's just, okay, I did that diet for 6 weeks and now I'm done. I lost the weight. Now I'm back to where I was. Or my financial situation is always the same. Or I'm always struggling in my relationships. It's always drama. It's always the struggle bus or fight. I'm always fighting. Those are things that, even despite what the reality of your life is, with the diversity issue, the lack of diversity we have in the world, in leadership in our country, when we have misuse of power, corruption, when we have things that are not fair, inequality across all different types of factors, there are things that actually we are victim to, and we are limited by those particular factors at this time. It doesn't mean that regulating the nervous system, down regulating your stress response, cannot create huge shifts in the way you interact with the world, and the way things start to open up for you, and the way that ripples out and creates an effect that can affect policy and create change for humanitarian efforts. And those are things that we all have to do on an individual basis to actually contribute to the world. I'm a baby. I'm a baby of the 80s. Let's see here. What is it called? I'm a millennial. And fellow millennials, there's a lot of cynicism in our age group. And even more so, I think in the younger age group, there's like more, less than cynicism. There's just almost this apathetic nature, like, well, the world's going to hell in a handbasket and I can't really do anything about it. So why even complain? It like moved from the space of anger about corruption. This isn't fair. This isn't right, to whatever. And apathy is the lowest energetic scale. If you ever read any of the books, Power versus Force, Dr. David Hawkins, really amazing guy, lots of different books he's written, but he has a scale of what the consciousness emotions are. When we go from apathy, anger is actually higher than apathy because anger creates movement, creates change. It's a transforming emotion. It only happens when we've crossed our boundaries or someone else has crossed our boundaries. And then we create change from that emotion. Then we move up to higher states of love, compassion, forgiveness, right? And I think that this movement from millennials to apathy is something that we just don't have the awareness, I think, of self-awareness of what we have done to ourselves and what we continue to perpetuate the trauma response and the stress responses, that we stay stuck. And anger and cynicism, guys, is enough at this point. I think we have the anger is there to create shifting in our things that are unfair. But I think it's using the anger in a skillful way and then not letting it burn you out and then just get you to the point where you just don't care and you are so angry at the world and other people and things that happen to you, right? This victim thing. I think that is where we need to create change. And because life happens through you. It does not happen to you unless you make that choice. But the thing that I've seen that's where I am grateful to continue to share with people is a lot of people don't know that we have a choice. Like, you legitimately may not understand that you have a choice, especially when it's just been your identity. This is who I am. I am always mad. And you have a sense of pride in who you are. I'm always someone that just runs away from things. I can't deal with stuff. Whatever it is, right? That's still a choice. And I love that we have that power of choice. We just have to share that we have that. And we don't always know that we have choice until we become conscious of what the unconscious patterns are. And that's why when you hear people say we're waking up, we're having an awakening, spiritual awakening collectively, whatever, all these different terms, when that happens, it's usually when when the identity of who you think you are blows up in your face. So let's talk about one example. You could be a mother that your child has now left the house and you are now an empty nester. Okay. Because who you thought you were and your value, what makes you valuable, is now changed. And there's a grieving part of that, but then you have to shift your identity. Oh, unless you want to have some foster kids, or you want to be a mother to now rescue animals. You can still continue in that as your identity if that's your path. But it can create a huge crisis and frustration and anger, and then even defending, this is who I am. You can defend your position politically. You can defend your position with your philosophy. You can defend anything. Whenever we fight in this country and between each other, it's usually when we're defending something that we believe is who we are. And I think that is also something that triggers the stress response, the animal response in this warring of tribes, warring of different people from different places. And if they don't look like us, they have different thoughts than us, then let's war against them. Let's become aware that that is just our animal consciousness that served us in amazing ways. But if we can be smart enough, because we are smart, to just take this education and awareness of, oh, wait, I'm an animal too, totally. There's a part of my brain that does that. Don't need to be ashamed of it. Just actually what keeps me alive. And I'm going to become conscious of the unconscious patterns of what create it. Because until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. It's Carl Jung. And when you know better, you do better. That's Maya Angelou. So I always tell people that breaking self-sabotaging patterns starts by recognizing your patterns. And that only comes through being aware of what you weren't aware of in the past. And that's usually unconscious things. And when you recognize triggers or things that put you in stress response states, then you can start to unravel the story of what has been your fate. And you start to see, wait, I have a choice here. And that's when I start seeing people's rigid patterns in their energy field break up, different aches and pains, headaches, migraines, weight we start losing weight, and they don't even do diet changes. There's so many cool things that happen when you downregulate the stress response. And years ago, so this presentation is called Mind Body Revolution. So I started this program, Mind Body Detox, over 10 years ago now. It's 2013. And I did it because I lost over 100 pounds, and I recognized people who were coming to see me as a mind body medium were struggling, not just their physical body as a massage therapist, but they were struggling with their energy. And their energy has to do with their consciousness, their state of mind, what they're eating. All of it's connected. It's a snapshot of who you are and what you're putting into your body and what you're cycling in your consciousness of what you believe is to be true. It's your reality. Your consciousness, your aura, and your energy field is a snapshot of your current reality. And so when people wanted to shift it, there was a lot of things we had to do. And sometimes it's detoxing environmental things or detoxing perspectives and mindset shifts and things that are beliefs, that kind of thing. But it was just really interesting to see that as people shifted out of their stress response, they moved out of this space. Okay, I'm done detoxing now. I need to now create balance in my life. And then as people start creating balance, they move into this space where their energy field is so radiant that they're radiating this light, and they're creating, and they're the people who start to say, oh my gosh, Kara, I'm living the law of attraction, or God is blessing me with all these blessings, and just things keep lining up with me. I'm in the flow. And then people in the spiritual community will call this like, I'm living in 5D. I love all the different words for it. It doesn't matter. It's just we're expanding our consciousness. And we have people, they get frustrated because they feel like they get stuck and it doesn't work for them. And I'm like, well, does your spiritual principles teach you that you're also a physical being and that you can't just ignore the physical body because it's a part of your consciousness too? And yes, your mindset and your beliefs and your spiritual energy system affects and manifests into physical form, but it's not like which came first, the chicken or the egg. I think it's all happening all at once. So you can affect the things through, you can have a ripple effect no matter what change you're making, whether it's a physical change or a mindset change, but it works better when they're doing it in tandem. So when we can become aware of where we sabotage ourselves, and especially patterns and triggers, how we can reframe them, that is the number one key to help people create change. This is where I think, well, it's been at 6 years now since the concept of shadow work has been, like, you might have heard that if you are a scroller on social media, you got to do your shadow work. And some people are like, what's shadow work? I'm like, it's just looking what things trigger you and the things you're afraid of, and this responses of things that are from programs that you want to be able to have the power of choice so that they don't trigger you anymore. It could be people, it could be situations, things that put you in fear. And again, fight or anger is just a layer of fear. It's another expression of it. It's overcompensating so you try not to feel afraid, which underneath fear is just, underneath anger is just fear. So when people are aware of those triggers through conscious inward self-awareness, that's when the power of choice comes back online. And that's when we start to see expansion in our consciousness and our collective. And this, like I said, the collective trauma that happened over the pandemic, people's identities that were solidified in who they think they were, because like I said, use the example earlier that if you were a mom, now you're an empty nester, or you're going through a divorce, or you lost your job or whatever. If you are so fighting that life experience that maybe the river of life is trying to take you somewhere else, trying to give you another perspective of what reality could be for you, especially if you've asked for it, right? Consciously asked for it, and you're still trying to be in control and hold on to what it is, it can be a pattern of wanting to hold on and control. I'm a recovering control freak, type A personality. Trust me, I got a lot of tools and tricks for that, guys. It's fun to learn how to let go and surrender, because that's when the magic happens, but it's very hard to do, especially when you want to mentally hold on to things. The mental body gets you stuck. It's when you get in heart coherence, get into the body, feel the body, somatic practices, somatic release, a lot of that, like yoga. I do Kundalini yoga, and that's like my favorite thing for doing that. Breath work, lots of different things. But all of that can help you get out of that state so that you're not identified so much by who you thought you were. Because if you ever want change in your life and you say, I'm doing all the mindset things and the money's still not coming or whatever, but then you see that you are still blocking it. So I have an example actually just came up recently. I know someone that's struggling financially in their life, and they had experience with a client that had written an email that they took offense to, and the client was just upset about something, and they got really upset. Like, the client wanted to come in and see them for a session, or see a bunch of people where they work for a session, and they got really upset about the email. And it wasn't something to be taken personally, but they took it personally, and they're really upset about money and lack, and there's lack consciousness they're going through. And when they finally got the person scheduled, they said, I don't want to see them because they're, whatever. And it's because the personal identity of that person that's upset took offense to the email, instead of realizing that it's an opportunity for growth, a growth mindset, to see maybe this is an opportunity to let go of my sense of fight, my sense of self, my sense of who I think I am. And this person didn't actually violate them. It was just a mindset perspective that they did. They could have not only potentially seen a new client, that new client was looking for a regular ongoing service that this person offers. They could have then created abundance for themselves for years to come. And then that person could refer them to someone else and someone else. See how that one thought of the ego identity of who that person thinks they were, and they took offense to one thing, shut them down. No, I'm in fight mode. No one talks to me like that. I won't be that person's practitioner. I'm not working on them. Bam, shut it down financially. That is a very common thing. When we try to hold up and fight to protect our identity. Now, the opposite is the people pleasers, right? Where we want to just make sure everyone's okay. Instead of holding a boundary with people, we might then give up our boundaries and give away too much, and then try to just give everything away because we want to make sure that we're liked and we're safe, because no one's going to kick us out of the tribe or our group. This is more of a primal experience, that if we are the helper and we're there, we have value, we will be safe, and we won't go to starve because we'll have someone to help us because we've helped them. There is this thing there. So I think it's important for us to just recognize we're here to evolve. And until we can be aware of the stress response and how to regulate them, we're just going to stay stuck in patterns and cycles. So we're going to take a moment. I'm going to take a little bit of a sip of my tea here with my favorite mug. It says I'd rather be in Hawaii. My spirit is always there, actually. But we're going to talk about the 7 foundations of health. Now, this is what I see in people's energy fields. I will work with as a coach, work with bringing self-awareness to these areas, how we can work with the physical body with somatic release, with different types of diet, lifestyle, breathwork, journal prompts, reprogramming patterns. Those are all connected to, like I said before, the aura, the energy field, is a snapshot of your current consciousness, which is actually going to creates your reality and will perpetuate your reality. Things that you perceive or misperceive, experiences that you continue to create, maybe, I don't want to say attract, but are attracted to. You're attracted to people that treat you a certain way because you're so used to it, or you have a belief that this is how things should be based on your programming, and things that have become solidified in your energy field. And when you want to shift that, we got to get down to understand the parts of it. So when I work with people, I'll do assessments to help them understand. I do an energy drawing, and then I work with them to help them discover what it is that might be in there. And I don't always give all the answers away, because some of this is about self-awareness and finding the intuition connecting you directly to source. That's the key. Any good coach will help you get your own answers, get along to the point where you can do it yourself, that you don't need them. And that's the goal of actually someone who's empowering you. And that's my goal. So my goal is to help bring awareness for people. And especially if you're out there and you've studied the energy system, maybe you've read a lot of books on energy medicine or the aura or the chakra system. I've had people that have come through my training program, and it's so cool, where, of course, I've taken those books and read those. I have so many resources that I've read over the years, and I have many, many trainings as an energy medicine professional and many, many different modalities. And what I found is that my original experiences with the energy field, before I had read any books, before I had any experiences with actually knowing what it was early on and learning it like a language. When I see this color and this hue, it means that. And then I see this show up in the body. It wasn't until I became a licensed massage therapist that I was able to create a language when I would work on people and I would experience their energy field. I would start to see these patterns and not only their characteristics of their personality, of how they were expressing themselves, things they would talk about, and how it showed up in the tissue and the way that their structure was from a muscular perspective and their posture. And then different things they would have on their paperwork that they have. I have this diagnosis. I have issues with autoimmune conditions, or I have issues with ovaries, or whatever it was, that I was like, this is an interesting language. So it wasn't until I then fell into the knowledge and wisdom of many different resources and programs that support awareness of the energy bodies from a mind-body perspective. And it does line up, a lot of them. But when I have people that have come through my program, I had people that have went through like a full 500-hour yoga teacher program, and they're like, I know everything about the chakras, right? And then they come and they're like, oh, I actually don't. So one of the things I love to talk about is that I like to talk about the evolution of the nervous system and how the chakras are just nerve bundles along. There's plexuses of nerves, a plexus is a nerve bundle. So the solar plexus is something we hear about. We know what that is. It's our stomach area. The solar plexus is an actual nerve plexus that our nervous system has grown, has these nerves that extend around the spine through all the organs on our stomach, our liver, large intestines. It feeds and nourishes all the organs there. And the solar plexus is one of the biggest nerve plexuses. And because of that, this is where the extension of our nervous system, when we have any sort of nervous system that's running on electricity, which our nervous system does, wherever there's electricity, there's electromagnetic energy. And that is where we then can say there's an energy field, an electromagnetic energy field that you may not be able to see with the physical eye. People like myself can see it. Some people can feel it and experience it, but you can feel it for yourself, because the energy centers that we talk about, that we're going to discuss here a little bit, the chakra system, is just depictions through different cultures. I mean, this is more the Eastern traditions. The yoga culture talks about the chakra system. There's many more chakras than just 7 that are depicted and talked about, but we're just going to talk about them in relation to the nerve plexuses. And so the stomach nerve plexus, the solar plexus, has many, many, many organs that are fed by that nerve plexus. And whenever we have, like I said, electromagnetic, the nervous system has electromagnetic energy field, we're going to have an extension of the nervous system. So what that means is you maybe orient yourself as a physical body. I'm walking around, here I am. But because you have a nervous system that runs on electromagnetic energy, and we talked about the heart energy, heart coherence, you have a field that extends beyond the body. Your nervous system is the extension of yourself out beyond the physical body. You have an ability, not just with your 5 senses, to sense with input. That's part of your nervous system, your 5 senses, to pick up lights, sounds, smells, things that are coming into the nervous system to give you information about the world around you. But we also have something else that's beyond those 5 senses. The phenomenon of someone walking into a room, you don't hear them, you don't see them, but there is a feeling of someone staring at you, or you have your hole being stirred in your back, and you just sense that someone's there looking at you. That is an experience of the extension of our nervous system. It's a really great survival mechanism that we could have used we can still use now when we're out somewhere exposed, where there could be predators, or we're somewhere where we just need to make sure we're scanning the environment, make sure someone's not looking at us. Or if we're alone walking down a dark alley, and that's already scary, right? We might be more on high alert. But if you then start sensing someone looking at you, and it turns out there actually is someone, not just imagined, that's again an extension of the nervous system. It's a survival mechanism. Same thing with the gut feeling. That gut feeling that we get, everyone says, oh my gosh, I had a gut feeling about that person. Something was wrong. I knew it. Or I have a really good feeling about this person when I first meet them. That gut feeling is the extension of the solar plexus nervous system bundle. That is, since that's the biggest bundle that most people have, people were skeptical about intuition. I was saying, did you ever have a feeling that it happened? Like a gut feeling, like in your belly? or if someone is trying to have a power play with you in altercation or whatever, or there's some sort of battle between people. This can be two people from any different types, walks of life. They're usually, if there is fear going on from a primal survival perspective of who's going to win, whether it's an intellectual battle or actually someone's going to fight, the nervous system will get really activated, and people might feel butterflies in their stomach or a rock in their stomach, or something doesn't feel good. Yeah, it's shutting down our digestive system. Like, physiologically, things are happening. This fight, flight, fawn, freeze stress response has been activated, but there may be things that there's no logical reason for. When you meet somebody, do you have butterflies in your stomach? Maybe it's a first date, right? But butterflies meaning this isn't a good feeling, butterflies. Like, I don't trust this person. That's the nervous system's extension, and that is a input interaction that you're getting, feeding information into the body and the nervous system, and then you interpret it. And over time, when you are aware, not just of the solar plexus, but the different nerve bundles along the spinal column, what their function is, when they normally get activated, for what stress response, and how when you're self-aware and you can downregulate the stress response, how that input can give you different extensions of your nervous system and intuition. That's where intuition development, when people always say, oh, Kara, can I become a medium? I'm like, yes, everyone's supposed to have a direct connection to source. This is not special. That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous to think that only one special person has been gifted to be able to talk to source, to talk to someone who's crossed over. Now, everyone can learn it. Not everyone's going to be do it for their job, but it's the fixed mindset of, oh, I can't do that, versus the reality is our nervous systems, our energy systems, the chakra system, whatever labels you want to talk about it, have been shut down because our consciousness has been in a place of working from fight, flight, fawn, or freeze, that stress response. And when we're in that response, we are not going to be open to these higher experiences. When people have spiritual experiences, maybe they go on a retreat, maybe they fast, maybe they're in prayer for days, maybe they go through some sort of plant medicine experience. There's many different ways and traditions that people will connect to the divine. And a lot of times, connecting to the divine involves some sort of practice that will allow the regulation of the system to come down, because there's an act of trust, trusting the universe, trusting God, source, giving up, surrendering somehow in that practice. And through that, it's overriding the nervous system and saying, I'm safe. What happens when we do that? We shut down fight, flight, fawn, freeze. The higher neocortex of the brain comes on, that is associated with spiritual experiences, innovative, creative thinking, intuition, all these direct lines to God's source. And we do that through a practice. And with practice over time, you can do it really quickly and get in these altered states quickly. Altered states of consciousness, like I talked about earlier, going from these beta brainwaves like drinking Starbucks coffee, hyper-focus, to more alpha theta brainwaves, relaxed state of awareness, they can only happen when we learn to manage our stress response. And I think that the key, the secret to getting into intuition, connect with source God, becoming a medium, all that is just training your nervous system. And if you are someone that is already heightened and has these experiences and is empathic or clairvoyant or whatever, then it's a matter, if your nervous system is already turned up, you have to learn how to turn down the psychic volume knob and manage it, or it's going to manage you, and you're going to have a fried nervous system. Trust me, it's most of my clients I work with and most of my experience having to learn to become resilient in my energy system. So I am not someone that I walk into a space and then I leave feeling really tired, that I leave feeling exhausted from everyone else's energy, that I soak it up like a sponge. Nope, that's not me anymore, and that doesn't have to be you. So whatever you are on the spectrum, if you want to get more in touch with your intuition, with your source, or if you want to turn down that heightened sensitivity, answers to both the same. Regulating the stress response, looking at inflammation response through diet, through activities, through lifestyle, through thoughts, patterns, beliefs, all of it. Because again, your energy field is a snapshot of your consciousness, and that makes your reality and continue to perpetuate your reality until you change it. So the 7 foundations of energy management, we're going to talk about each of these and just think about these, take inventory of yourself. There's a lot more characteristics that you would see, but this is just to share an idea. If If you have a goal or something in mind in your life that you want to do, or you've been trying to do, we want to take inventory without having to have a private session with me. Again, as much information as I can give you, what could be out of balance in your personal life and in your aura or your energy field. These 7 foundations are going to give you examples of characteristics of things you might be experiencing or maybe have experienced in the past. If there's imbalanced attributes that are showing up, that can tell you that that part of your energy system may have distortions. If I would read your aura, I'd say, oh, right there, that's what's going on. That might be blocking you. That's your reality. It's solidified in your conscious right now. And I can see why you keep creating or attracting the same types of person, different face, same job, different face, same financial situation, different day, all those things. So we want to shift that. And that all starts with self-awareness. We cannot change a pattern or a habit if we don't have the self-awareness that we have it in the first place. So let's take a mental inventory here as we go through. So when we have a goal, we usually have a vision for it. This is where our thinking comes online. When we have details of what we want to do. But we need to also make sure that we don't have delusional thinking, that what we're thinking about is actually realistic for us. Maybe we don't need to know how or why. That can be up to spirit or God or your higher level thinking that comes on when you downregulate your stress response to create these solutions for you that you maybe couldn't think of before. But making sure we're not having these magical thinking that's not in touch with reality. Headaches or eye problems. These can be physical symptoms of this energy center being out of balance. If you struggle with a lot of self-judgment or judgment of other people, this psychological guarding, right? That can be a defense mechanism to keep you safe from maybe rejection or disappointment or whatever has happened in the past, but it can be something that can block you from a perspective of manifesting and creating change. Lack of spiritual connection. You don't feel connected to something spiritual. And this can also relate to having some sort of trauma or negative experience around religion or organizations. They may not have, because there's a lot of religions that get a bad rap by the people who are touting that particular book, by the congregations or the groups that are just the people. It's not the God. It's not the philosophy. It's the people that misrepresent or misinterpret or are fundamentalist or something like that. That creates some people who just don't have this. They have beef with God or source or goddess or whatever it is. And there's a lot of fear, anger, or resentment or whatever around that. Or just not even knowing how to connect to that spirituality. You don't know what it looks like for you individually. Poor memory. So this is where we have the hippocampus, the part of the brain that regulates, retains, and recalls memory. The distortions can happen when we have this regulation. This also connected to our ability to focus or not focus. So if we're too focused, we're too rigid, and we have blinders on, we're either too logical or too airy-fairy, right? There's imbalances here that I'll see. And this is the third eye. So this is right around the head space. And most of the people I work with and I see, most of their energy field is concentrated in their head because we think that we have to think our way out of our problems. We don't always feel our way. And that is a huge block in people's lives where they're trying to think for solutions, but they're still thinking from an operating mode of a heightened nervous system with a stress response. Once they regulate it, they're going to get feelings. Their heart coherence is going to come back online. They're going to get feelings, emotions that maybe need to be released, that are somatically being held in the body, that keeps that stress response going. And once they release that, they'll start to have this emotional sense, this heart wisdom of what to do, and balancing that intuitive wisdom of feeling with this logical, analytical thinking. And that's how we take the feeling, the intuition, the downloads from spirit, whatever you call it, and then we make the action-oriented, logical thinking map to create the idea, the thought, the inspiration, and put into a system that then is logical step by step. And even that logical step-by-step process, even for me, is guided by source spirit, my intuition. I love to create systems around things. I'm a systems person. So it's like, yes, I'll have an idea, but then I'll ask spirit, how should I structure this? Structure doesn't have to be non-spiritual. There's a lot of this like, well, I don't want to like, it's the 3D, or like the physical world is so finite and so limited, and boundaries and structures just make things feel not, I'm a creative free spirit. And I'm like, I'm a creative free spirit, but you're not truly free until you understand how to work with the system, the system in which you're living in. And that is this physical world. And when you can learn to work with the tools of the physical world, time, space, finances, resources, orienting yourself to your physical body, when you learn how to function in that way, that's where you can take the orienting ideas and make it logical and step by step. If you have inability to focus because you have you're scattered and you're all over the place, or you have a lot of creative thoughts and you can't figure out which one to start with, that's also a sign of imbalance. So people who are really balanced in this space they're very wise, centered. They're usually clear with their internal visual screens, as I call it. They're very clairvoyant. If I can say, imagine, a picture of a pink elephant, you can think of it and visualize it very clearly. There is not distortions or delusions in their mindset. There's no paranoia happening. They're connected spiritually. They have a good memory recall, and they're able to be very present and have good mental focus. Now, if any of these are out of balance for you, don't go down on a shame spiral and think you're not good enough and now you have to fix this because something's wrong with you, because that needing to fix something can actually perpetuate problems. Because if you feel like you need to fix something, right, what's it going to do? Put you in stress response. What's stress response going to do? Keep your energy field out of balance and keep your consciousness in a space where it's going to have a hard time solving a problem. All right, true expression of our self and purpose. So when we create an idea or goal or something we want to accomplish, the next thing I ask somebody about is trying to get to the truth of why they want to do it. Is this something that you want to do is coming from a place of who you authentically are, what you really truly want, what your purpose is? Even if your purpose is to be a student right now and not create some amazing business, or be maybe it's just to be a stay-at-home mom, maybe that's your purpose, but is what it is that you're trying to do coming from a place of truth of who you are, not as an identity of who you become because of your job or your status, but who you are as an essence of a soul. Is that true? Now, imbalance, we'll see you're not able to speak up and express your essence of who you are. You have the inability to listen to other people and truly hear them. When people are in stress response, they have a hard time communicating and hearing. If they're in stress response as a people pleaser, they'll have a hard time. They'll maybe listen a lot, but then they won't speak their truth, and they'll try to people please and make sure everyone's okay. Or they'll overly communicate and overexpress themselves because they don't feel like they're heard, or they don't feel understood, and they want to make sure everyone understands them so they don't hate them. They could have excessive talking or not talking at all, not expressing at all. Low confidence in their expression of their truth, who they are, even how they show up, how they dress, how they carry themselves, and just the way that they're talking. Not able to be completely honest, exaggerating facts, or just not feeling the ability to be straightforward. Maybe there's vagueness. So it's not necessarily dishonesty, but vagueness. And not having a sense of knowing what your purpose is. Balance is, I know how to say no. I know this is not my purpose. I know this is or this isn't. Confident in expressing the self, mindful with words, knowing the power of the words and how those affect your beliefs and your energy field, honesty, and being able to be a good listener, not just to others, but to source, to your higher power, to your intuition. Next phase is from an idea to making sure that idea is truthful and honest for who you authentically are. Then we need to make sure that in order to have the fuel to embark on actions to make whatever our idea or intention a reality, we have to make sure that we're nurturing ourselves and we have enough self-care to create the movement and then sustain the momentum to make a lasting change. So imbalance we see, mostly in the healers, is the inability to receive. We got a lot of giving going on. It can be the opposite, where there's so much rigidity and pain around distrust around relationships or whatever, that there is an inability to give. And it's more of, what can I get out of things? Me, give to me. These are more like energy vampire type of dynamics where you feel drained by someone. They're always asking, they always are needy. They're give me this, give me that. And again, there's no right or wrong way. There's no one better than worse. They're both the same sort of situation, the opposite side, different side of the coin. we need this balance between the ability to give and to receive. Because when you're able to have a flow of giving and receiving in your energy field and your consciousness, you're open to new ideas, you're open to help, to support from other people, from the universe, from sources, and your ego identity is not so solidified and prideful about, no, I can't accept that new idea because I didn't come up with it myself. Or I already knew that. You can't even accept a different perspective on something maybe you learned before. Maybe you learned about the law of attraction before or whatever, but your fixed mindset because you're in a space of, I don't want to give because I'm so hurt by people, and I don't want to receive because I don't know if people are going to give me good stuff because I don't trust people. Again, this is one scenario. It could be that we're not able to receive even an old teaching, something that we thought we already learned, and from a new light, receive from a curious mind, new information, new perspectives, not just mental receiving, but then love, receiving help, receiving hugs, receiving compliments, and giving them too. If we're guarded emotionally, this is where I see most of my millennial friends and fellow millennials. We have this guarded emotional self because we've been hurt. We have distrust in our world and corruption we see, and we have the cynicism. And of course, that's all the humor. And most of the stand-up comedians in that our millennials love are just like this whole, self-deprecating, cynical thing. And that's okay, but it's also a sign of a shut down, guarded heart because of what we've been through. And that builds resentments, and resentments keep your energy field dim. It keeps you unable to receive and also unable to give. And that perpetuates a cycle in your reality and keeps people stuck. This also shows up as jealousy, envy, depression, or loneliness. So look at this thing, thinking of just the concept of guarding the heart, guarding that love, nurturing of others, and nurturing of self. The loving, compassionate, peaceful people that are having the resilience and the ability to find joy, even during challenging times, express love and compassion and forgiveness. This is the balance of giving and receiving. And when I see someone that has that, they have a resilient energy system. They have a resilient immune system too. So this is all connected to different parts of the body too. I'm not going to go much into them today. I go into that more in our Mind Body Detox program if that's something you're interested in. But this is, again, just to start you off with that self-awareness. Confidence and motivation and discipline. So if you filled your cup up, right, and you're ready to go, you're like, oh, I got my idea. I know this is my truth. And I got my cup's filled, and I got enough momentum and energy to keep going in a sustainable way. This is where, when you start making action steps on your goal or intention, we inevitably will be met with some sort of challenge. And that's where, when the challenge or the discomfort comes up in the nervous system, it can look like anxiety, or it could be excitement, because anxiety and excitement, that the body doesn't know the difference between anxiety and excitement. Whatever the challenge is, it creates discomfort in the nervous system. And this is where athletes and people who have this strong discipline, this willpower, they have a big solar plexus energy. They are really good. They have power, they have patience, they have stamina, they're disciplined. They may be type A and perfectionist, so that creates distortions, so that can be imbalanced, but they usually have this fire, this pushing to go and meet the challenge. If you don't have enough of that, you may have low self-worth and confidence, because we build confidence through facing challenges. Things that are a little bit challenging, that create a little bit of discomfort, that we go through it anyway, is how we naturally build confidence. If we don't have that sense of being able to override this need to avoid the discomfort, we can feel out of control by the stress response. And then we can want to control things around us instead of our stress response. This is where controlling other people, getting easily irritated or angry or frustrated, wanting to control other people, type A personality. It could be even just being hyper vigilant with the way things need to be. In the extreme cases, it's OCD, but this can also be where you have to clean everything to feel, I need to downregulate my system, this nervous energy. I got to control something, and sometimes that's a healthy stress response system for people. I know a friend of mine that when they get really stressed, part of their self-soothing behaviors is to go and organize their collections. And they know that they're doing it, and they're doing it consciously. So it's beautiful because they said, this is what helps calm me right now. I am in a space where I know I feel like I need to control something, and I have done my breath work, I've done my other things, and I still feel a little bit out of control. So I'm going to organize something so I can get some dopamine and feel better afterwards. And then I'm going to feel much more in control, even though the situation, whatever it's a relationship or financial or life circumstance that's come up, that's brought these feelings of not being in control. Organizing the collections aren't going to fix it, but it can help them feel better to regulate their system in the meantime. It's more of an issue if there's cleaning, hyper organization, and other things that are going on to control a circumstance, but not getting to the root of why you feel out of control and not finding other ways to create control and balance within the self. Because we can't control other people. We can't control the world. We can only control ourselves. And that's where we move from this space of life happens to me, victim consciousness, low self-worth, oh my gosh, powerlessness, victimization, angry because of the victimization. This is a big thing in the world right now. Being bullied or bullying others because we want to be in control, being overly prideful. This is what we see. This energy is so dominant in our field as a collective. And this is also where we can self-sabotage because we have this perfectionist nature. But when we have that going on, we're going to have to find ways to have life happen through us, not life happening to us. Say life happening to us is this powerless victimization consciousness instead of, you know what, I know what I can control and what I can't. That is the power, the true power there. And that is where you can let go and surrender happens. So a balance in this space is having self-esteem through going through challenging things that you build your self-confidence up, having patience, because the fire and the anger usually is boundaries being crossed or not being, patient enough with something, we get frustrated because we want it to happen now. And patience and trust, divine power, trusting the divine to come through you, to inspire you. Having self-control, seeing things as a challenge to maybe learn more patience or self-control, seeing it as a challenge accepted of learning this behavior instead of seeing it as something that is a situation that you feel victimized and out of control of, taking it and twisting it around with a new perspective to help yourself learn a sense of actually feeling in control, and then you build your sense of self-esteem. Accepting other people, not judging other people or being bullying. Having a healthy sense of pride of who you are. Pride is something we need to have, a healthy sense of who we are. Unhealthy pride is usually loud and proud, and healthy pride is usually quiet. We don't defend ourselves when we actually are healthy in pride of who we are. Having the stamina and having the discipline. So far, you might have a lot of this stuff going on, and it's perfectly reasonable in our culture. Most people have a lot of imbalances and they're not even aware. So that's why I'm like, all right, guys, it's time for the first stage. First stage is detoxing this stuff. And second stage is finding a nice balance. And the third stage is you're really radiating your light and your life force and your purpose. And that's when you really start co-creating your life with source in a really big way. It's really cool. So imbalance in this area is when you have this sense of stamina and you're moving forward, you're making the choices, you're growing your confidence in it. You continue to co-create and get this sense of fun and play in what you're doing that creates this momentum. This is emotional charge in a healthy, balanced way. So you're fueling your success by the emotion, by this sense of, oh my gosh, I'm doing this. And when we have imbalances, we will see a lot of emotional imbalance, a lot of high octane, really high functioning, high octane, high highs and low lows, where we have this ups and downs roller coaster of an emotional state. This could also correlate with hormonal imbalances, lower energy field, lower energy levels. Also, sex and intimacy is also correlated here because it's all about sensual pleasures. So we need to enjoy and have fun in the physical bodies. And if we're not doing that, not just through sex, but enjoying the sensual pleasures of food and textures and light and color and bathing and massages and flowers and all those things, we're going to have an imbalance in this particular area because we're not enjoying the physical world. We can have enmeshment and poor energy boundaries. This is where I see people get lost in relationships. They lose their sense of self. They also are very highly porous, meaning they absorb the energy of other people and are easily influenced by the emotions of others that can bring them up or down. So they don't feel in control of their emotions because they're absorbing their sadness of their partner, and they just let themselves, that's mine, that's who I am now. And that can be really hard. There can be the opposites of either someone that's completely shut down, apathetic, dullness, no emotion, or dramatic, up and down, high and low emotions. Blocked creativity can also be coming up, and longing or discontentment. I think longing, discontentment is the best indicator of this energy center being imbalanced. Long-standing feelings of discontentment. Nothing's enough. It doesn't feel enough. I'm never happy. That's a huge thing that I see for people. If we're balanced, we have emotional balance, stable energy, healthy intimacy, confidence in their sexuality, our sensual pleasures that we're experiencing in the world, our expression in ourselves with our relationships. We're passionate, we can be creative and content. And passion is different depending if you're introverted or extroverted. It looks different, but we all can still have this sense of passion. There's things that when we think about it, we get fired up in our mind about, yeah, that's the thing I love. You don't have to necessarily express it like someone like myself who's, a fire element person. I'm like, yeah, but you still have passion for something and it fuels you. All right. So after we have continued to create this sense of pleasure and fun in creating or manifesting our goal or intention, whatever we set out to do, we need to make sure that we're also continuing to remain grounded in our action, keep boundaries intact for ourselves with whatever structure we've set up. So if we have poor body awareness, if we're struggling with poverty consciousness, poor time management, low energy, or just drama in feeling safe in a physical body as a human, if we don't feel a part of the human tribe, and this is familial, but if it's like you go out and you're like, I just don't connect with anybody. If you haven't found that sense of conscious connection to a certain type of group, this is why we have congregations. This is why people who go to sports games, they don't know anybody, but you know what? If you're on that team, there's this collective consciousness of we're on the same team. This is where we have this sense of feeling safe. And this particular energy center is so intertwined with our stress response related to feeling safe in the physical world. It is the root center. The nerve plexus is related to the base of the spine, the pelvic plexus. So when we are in extreme situations of stress response where our life is threatened, this is where we see people, the nervous system will actually lose bladder control. And you may even roll up into a ball in fetal position to protect yourself. This is extreme circumstances, but it's just an example of how the nervous system or this chakra, the root chakra, how it's related to that pelvic plexus that can lose bladder control when we don't feel safe. And that's why this energy center is correlated to all functions and beliefs and experiences in our reality related to feeling safe in a physical body. That's why when you're not aware of your body and you have poor body awareness, you may not feel safe. You may be disassociated from trauma or whatever's going on, or what had happened, or you just don't feel safe. You feel overstimulated, but also feeling connected to a human tribe that helps you feel safe. We are tribal mammals, social animals, that we need that sense for our limbic system, the part of the brain to not, you can't think your way out of it. You can do solo lone wolf healing all you want, but your nervous system is still an animal, and you can't override that. There is a need for you to feel a part of something, a part of a group, that they've got your back and that they love you and support you. So that's one big missing piece that I find people then end up coming to work with us or be a part of our program and our clubs and our consciousness groups and things that we have that are community oriented, because doing it alone only can get you to a certain point before you need to actually stimulate that part of the brain through activities that involve other people that you can feel safe around. But when you have this not feeling safe in the body, like I said, that pelvic plexus freaking out, losing bladder control, extreme examples of not feeling safe. This is where people over time, long periods of disassociation from the body, there is not an ability for the brain to access time management. This is where you have a hard time managing resources of time or money or numbers or things that are more, they operate from this physical dimension of body orientation, if that makes sense. So when we have balance, we'll see full body awareness, family connections, financial balance, pleasure and sensation, being able to have time management and being motivated. As a medium, part of my journey was getting very embodied, very embodied, and systems and structures and time management and money management and things that are just another extension of my consciousness to play around with source, to see how can we utilize the inspirations that I get to support consciousness evolving on this planet. That's my purpose. How can I support other people to become aware of themselves and more aware, because it's always an ongoing journey, even for myself. There's no finish line. That's like consciousness, war consciousness thinking. We have to win. There's a finish line. That is the fight consciousness, the old brain that thinks they're going to win. You're going to find safety. You're going to find a resolution. And this is going to be done. It is evolving. So it's like these structures, in general, like understanding structures, boundaries, and grounded action are a huge thing that I see healers, the missing piece for them, because they're so oriented to the non-physical. If they're people that are energy workers or intuitive, or they're creative types, right? They're artists. There's this orientation to inspiration and altered states of kind of spacey, like, oh, I'm experiencing this. And then you get inspiration to create something, but then it's maybe not fully created. It doesn't actually get manifested fully, or it's half manifested, or it doesn't ever get put out there. There's a lot of things that could come up with that. But a lot of this, again, goes back to the trauma response, the stress response, whether it's chronic stress or actually a traumatic event that's happened that keeps the energy system in that space. And then we have trust, hope, and interconnection. It all comes back to our energy system is a snapshot of our consciousness and how our consciousness is shaping our reality. And when we don't have trust in something beyond ourselves, even if you were an atheist, we need to have trust in fellow humanity. We need to have trust in that gravity will work. We need to have trust in something, hope, because that fundamental thought of hope and trust can create a downregulation in the system. We don't have to fight. We don't have to fight, fawn, freeze. We trust there's flow. The system can then relax. The tissue, the body connective tissue can relax. The posture can relax. We don't have to be so guarded. We can have a different way of thinking. Again, this all comes back to this trauma response. And then when we see imbalances in this, this is when people have just completely checked out. They're distrustful, paranoid, spacey, disconnected from themselves, from life, from other people. They can be dizzy, disoriented. This is when I see imbalances. I can also see people who are very, very faithful. If they're trusting in divine wisdom and connection and consciousness, they understand, not from an intellectual perspective, but they understand and experience or have experienced the state of oneness of how everything is really, truly interconnected. And that I'm really hoping for more of that on this planet. And this will only happen from a balanced perspective if we have a spiritual experience. And that, to me, that's where divine grace comes in, where I trust the universe in its mysterious ways to have things that help us wake up, like huge identity shifts that maybe are uncomfortable, where we are forced to either struggle until we let go and surrender and let God or let source or whatever, and then things start to open up for us, which is how it works, guys. I don't care how many people fight me on it. It's how it works. When you continue to do that, even from a perspective of getting out of the metaphysical, once you stop struggling and let go and trust, your nervous system can downregulate. Again, the brain can come back online. You can have these creative, innovative thinking to find solutions or see opportunities you didn't see before. It's just how the neuroscience works, guys. So again, we're merging the science and the woo-woo here. It's always what I want to do. I want to, again, bring in more information as I continue to learn. And when we can understand and experience oneness in our consciousness, we really can't go back. We have this awareness now, and that's where we then always are longing for that experience, to recreate it, to find a sense in our nervous system that we can live and embody that connection to oneness. And when I've had my own personal experiences with that divine grace, with that source, it's about fully being sourced or resourced to in my body, like having the feeling and awareness that everything in and around us is source experiencing itself, and just having the experience somatically and mentally and spiritually all at once that this is all a construction of co-creation with God. We are all in this amazing reality that we get to choose because we have the gift of the power of choice. And if we don't have the wisdom or the insight or the education to make a choice, that is where someone would come along with divine grace. It may be me, it may be someone else, maybe multiple people that can continue to remind you that you have the power of choice to make a different life for yourself, a different reality. That victim consciousness is just a lie. So I have a handout for this. So if you're interested and you want to join our online community, that you can get the recording of this and our handout for this, you can do that here, or you can go back to this video and you can pause this. But these are some questions just to ask for yourself. Just take some time, take a notebook. You can go back and watch this later to get these questions. You can write them down now. But what are the things you truly want for yourself? Maybe list 5 things. And ask the question, if I had all the time, money, energy, resources, love, support, confidence, all the things that your mind wants to say you don't have and that you're lacking, if you had all of those, what would you really want for yourself? Good question, right? Then when you have asked that question, what are your stress response patterns? Do you fight? Do you flight? Do you fawn? Or do you freeze? Do you all 4 of those? And in what situations do you do them? How have those stress response patterns blocked you, or are they continuing to block you in your life now, especially when achieving certain goals? What feels out of balance in your mind, body, or spirit? So when we talked about these last 7 energy centers, characteristics that you related to, you're like, oh yeah, that definitely is something I want to figure out how to regulate that. How do I find balance in that? So that is something to reference. Take an energy assessment of where you might feel out of balance in your mind, body, or spirit. And then we want to look at our emotions. We have emotions around a goal. So picking that goal, whatever it is you want to do, your intention, picking one of those 5 things. That if you had all the resources, time, money, love, support, confidence in the world, right? If you had all those things and you were going to pick one of those things to do, say one of the things is to go skiing for the first time, or, maybe that's a big goal for you because it's scary or whatever. We want to explore the emotion that we have listed out here and how it relates to your goal or intention. Because the emotional piece is where we have blind spots. We've learned to push down our emotions in this culture. We usually push them down with food or substances or avoidance. And then they get stuck in our patterns. And then we use substances to avoid them. And it's a perpetual cycle to kind of put down the body sensation. So if we just look at the fear in general, just fear related to going skiing, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most amount of intensity and 1 being the least, if you were going to feel fear, what is the fear on a scale of 1 to 10? Is it a 7? Is it 8? Whatever it is. And then notice in your body what sensations you might have related to that emotion. What are you feeling in your body around that thought of going skiing for the first time, or whatever your goal is? Then you want to think about guilt. What if the thought of guilt comes up because maybe going skiing is an expensive thing? Maybe you have friends that are struggling financially and you feel like maybe I shouldn't go because, like this self-deprecating, like I shouldn't go enjoy myself because I am doing more well off than my 2 friends that really want to go and they might be jealous of me, right? Whatever that is, if that goal brings up feelings of guilt on a scale of 1 to 10, how intense is it? And where is it in your body? What this serves to do from an energy perspective when I'm working with clients is we will look at what emotions are coming up related to any particular goal. And we look at where it might be housed in the energy system. And then we work with different tools and techniques, body work if appropriate, yoga movements, breath work, food, whatever it makes sense with that particular area and then emotion that is creating a stopping point, a limitation in the belief system, in the energy field, in the consciousness, in the reality that person is perpetuating. Because we want to change and shift the reality. And a lot of times we don't know what we don't know. We're unconscious of a pattern. And when we start to look at the emotions that are lined up behind a thought of a goal we want to attain, then we can look at where we might be blocking ourselves unconsciously and where we might be holding it in the physical body. This is where mindset work meets somatic work. We need to not just look at the thought and the habit and retrain our brain and our unconscious, subconscious mind to get a new belief, but we need to release it in the way that it might be being stored in our physical tissue and the nervous system. So that is the next stage. So also I say that journal about any of the emotions or body responses that feel particularly charged for you. When you go through this list, has any of the responses impacted your goals in the past? And have they led to self-sabotage? Right? Do you have self-sabotage? And also there's some spots there for any emotions that I didn't list. All right. Based on your stress responses and your energy assessment and past patterns, think about one area of focus that may be beneficial to explore to support your success. Because if you had one action step to take based on going through all that inventory, what action step would you take to move forward? That is the question to ask. And this is, again, why this inward, introspective, hibernation time of winter, to really get clear on what it is that we want, what we're capable of, and what's blocking us, can then set us up for creating a structure and a framework to actually make the action steps a lot more sustainable and actually create transformation. What I mean by transformation is like lasting change, not just okay, quickly I went on a diet or whatever, and now I'm back to the beginning. It's a complete lifestyle change. Because when you shift your energy, your consciousness, the world around you will shift, and sometimes miraculously quickly. Not just the type of people that you're around or who will come to you, things will show up out of the blue. You will shift the electromagnetic field, the vibrational field that you emit, and it will continue to bring new opportunities into your life, or it will continue to shut down and perpetuate opportunities that you've had, or maybe things can get, from our perspective, the word worse, but it's not better or worse from collective consciousness perspective. There's no good or bad. That's a black and white thinking animalistic response. A higher consciousness perspective is that there is no good or bad. There's just more what we want, what we don't want. And what we're choosing is preference or not preference. So when we can come from a place of neutrality and not having this like charged view of what we want and what we don't want, because the charged view will heighten the nervous system response of fight, flight, fawn, freeze, right? We get this like angry, I don't want that, right? But the neutrality helps to have this flow through our energy system, this trust of source, this trust of who we are, this allowance. And again, there's a lot of mindset shifts and body somatic releasing we need to do. And even sometimes that relates to our food choices. And we're going to talk about that here. This is where I'm going to go into explaining how holistic modalities are intertwined. So I run a holistic wellness clinic in York, Pennsylvania. It's Firefly Hollow Wellness Center. We've been open since 2013. And over the years, I had learned, to me, the surprising awareness of how many holistic practitioners don't actually live a holistic lifestyle. I'll say it again. How many holistic practitioners don't actually live a holistic lifestyle? Now, this is not to judge anyone or shame anyone or anything like that, but it just came down to my awareness over the years, because I had expectations on what my experience was about holistic and integrative wellness model, that this is what it is. But what the reality is that there's lack of understanding, maybe misrepresentation. There might be a mental awareness, like a mental concept, a conceptual awareness of what it is. But until you experience and walk the talk of the concept, you won't actually see it as a reality and understand how it works. When you understand that your stress response is connected to what you're eating, how much you're sleeping, what you're thinking, and you actually are doing it, and you see these shifts where other people are talking about the law of attraction and synchronicity and things that sound ridiculous and 5D, and you're like, that's weird. The resentment, the guarding, the millennial, like that's BS, like those BS meters come on. This is where I see people get stuck, where they don't actually let themselves get into this experience of what the holistic wellness model can do for them. Because from a science perspective, it is allowing your system to downregulate, higher level thinking comes on, innovative thinking, connective thinking, you can see opportunities. Like that's what happens. And then when those opportunities happen, we're in this curious state of consciousness, open-minded learning. This is where we can see what has been blocking us. We're not in a state of solidified identity. And from a perspective, first, we're going to talk about energy medicine and how that can support the overall process. So first off, energy medicine is an umbrella of services that could include Qigong, Reiki, acupuncture, pranic healing, anything that works with the electromagnetic energy field of the system, chakra balancing, all of that. And when a practitioner is trained in energy medicine modalities, most of the time they're using some form, sound healing also, forgot about that, that's vibrational in nature, it shifts the energy field. They are trained in locating imbalances in the energy field in some capacity. Each modality has a different method of doing that and different methods for creating balance, but they're all geared to create overall balance in the system. Here's a perspective on what happens when there's imbalances in the system. When I see people's energy field out of balance, let's give an example of most Americans walking around. They have a lot of their energy field is up around their head and not embodied. Fight, flight, fawn, freeze, or the stress response has been kicked in. So we move into this space of being hyper intellectualizing. It's also supported by our culture to think things and problem solve and think our way out of emotions, right? It's not okay to feel. So we don't drop into the body. We try to override those things. And so when we have that, you see the electromagnetic field, the energy field, the aura lifts up and it's more disconnected from the body. It's more up here. And I see it kind of concentrated around the head. And then there's less awareness of the physical body. The consciousness is not as embodied in or around the lower part or the lower half of the legs, the feet, the hips, unless there's some sort of pain or something physically that's happened to the physical body, oriented the consciousness to become aware of that area. So from an energy medicine perspective, let's talk specifically about color puncture. This is a modality that I offer it's needleless acupuncture, and we use light and frequency to activate the meridian points, which are points along the energy channels that traditional Chinese medicine works with in acupuncture systems. And we work with this particular needleless acupuncture device that sends a frequency of light that connects with the biophoton receptors of the cells. And that communicates to that system in the nervous system to regulate itself a little bit quicker than we can with blood-borne chemical transactions. So if you're trying to create a system change by taking a medication or a food, you have to take it, digest it, has to get into the bloodstream, and through chemical messengers and neurotransmitter changes, it then affects the overall system. But light actually affects the system quicker because we have these beautiful things called biophoton receptors in our eyes and on our cells, on our skin, I should say. So we are orienting with this energy modality, color puncture, to look at the system to see, is that person imbalanced from top to bottom? Is there too much of their energy flowing up here or not down here? What symptoms we can see when it's flowing up here too much? Headaches, migraines, overthinking, obsessive compulsive, not being able to be aware of the body, digestive complaints. So there's a lot of symptoms that can be correlated to that. Then we also look at imbalances from the left and the right side of the body. Are there imbalances in Chinese medicine? It's like yin and yang, imbalances. In color puncture, it's that as well. But then we also look at the hemispheres of the brain. If the hemispheres of the brain are imbalanced, you're going to see imbalances in the left and right sides of the face. Maybe one eye is droopier than the other. Like there is this incoherence in the right and left sides of the brain and how they're communicating. Well, that can correlate to how we process or not process unresolved issues, unresolved patterns that create the belief that contribute to the reality and the beliefs that what we think is real for us. Because if we're not able to orient our logical and intuitive sides of the brain and not communicating, there can be some unresolved issues. It can also relate to sleep patterns. We're not getting into the deeper stages of sleep. We're not going to actually be able to resolve things. So that is the first modality, energy medicine. Now, Reiki, chakra balancing, again, the whole goal is to create balance through either hands-on touch, acupuncture needles, hands above the body touch. We're using the flow and trying to create a balance top to bottom, left to right, diagonally, so that there is an overall flow. If you would imagine it like a toroidal field, like a fountain of energy that coming up through the spinal column, out the top of the head, down around the body, around underneath the feet, and coming back up and just cycling through. Like this perpetual energy flow fountain, if you could imagine it like water. If it's getting stuck somewhere, if there's too much of a flow or too little of a flow, in that system, it's going to, of course, it's correlated to the nervous system. So it's going to start creating imbalances in the way the nervous system functions and flows to vital organs and how those organs are communicating to the brain and how everything's connected. So that being out of balance can support or can perpetuate this lack of receiving that goal, whatever that goal is. Again, financially, health oriented, whatever. So I think it's like when you're working with the nervous system is like working with the energy medicine practitioners are like working with they're like electricians of the body, right? That's what I see them as. Massage therapists are working with the physical tissue, and chiropractic is working with the structure. So those things are paramount for working with creating a lasting lifestyle change, because it doesn't just shift the tissue of the body. Because when you get energy work done, it can relax muscle fibers just from working with the energy system that weren't relaxed before. It can relax the mental state, moving you into a nice altered state, like a light meditative state. If you've ever had relaxation tools like Reiki or anything like that, usually people feel relaxed. And again, these are all down regulating the system, but it can also help your system gain that resilience because you're able to let it get down regulated. People are able to sleep better. So the nervous system, because it's so intertwined with the hormonal system, sleep, the physical tissue, the tense integrity of the tissue or not, it is really a missing piece that I think that people don't always get, because they think it's maybe they think it's woo-woo. I'm not sure. They haven't had a practitioner they've had experience with that was effective for them. So I do think that learning energy modalities for yourself, whether it's learning Reiki to just treat yourself, getting treatments from an acupuncturist or someone else, finding someone that you really resonate with to just make sure it's a good match. Those are huge pieces that people don't always utilize, because especially if you're stuck in a pattern, even psychologically, working with a psychotherapist and an energy medicine professional, they can really go hand in hand. Because of how the brain can get regulated through just gentle light touches on reflex points, on acupuncture points, and how that can change and orient the way that the consciousness is connecting to the brain connecting to the body, and vice versa. Massage, stretch therapy, yoga, fascial health. This is more of the connective tissue of the body, the muscle fibers. This is where we see holding patterns in the fight, flight, fawn, or freeze system, where we have been on these modes for so long that maybe your calves are chronically tight. You're always set to run. Your nervous system is always shutting down your digestive system, because that's the first system to go when we're in a space where we need to run or flee or fight. Your system needs to save energy and not put energy into digestion at that time. It needs to maybe move the blood flow and everything to your arms and legs, getting ready to run. And over time, that chronic stress response will start to create changes in the tissue. Congestion in the neck and shoulders, in the low back, in the hips, in the legs, in the arms. You might even unconsciously ball your fists up, and then you have forearm tension. So there are also things like repetitive motion, the way we sit in our posture at work, that affect these things. But then again, those also affect the flow of energy through the energy channels that we work with us from an energy medicine perspective. So we have to release that. We have to work with stretching, with a body worker that we really like, that can help assist the body to get into a new state of being. Because until you're in a new state of being, you're going to perpetuate the reality of which you were being before. And then nutrition and diet, and just the chemical nature of how we operate, things in our environment that can affect our inflammation levels, like mold, environmental toxins, heavy metals, things in our food that we might be sensitive to. We might not know that we have a sensitivity to corn, that every time we eat corn chips, we get an inflammatory response, but it's not an anaphylactic response like, peanuts, a peanut allergy, but it may be over the next 48 hours, you just feel inflamed, and you've never correlated it to that. And that inflammation in the body inflames the brain. Inflammation of the brain is associated with anxiety, depression, and other issues with the brain, and cognition and mental brain fog. So these are things that you're like, well, wait a minute, my diet, like sugar intake, caffeine intake, yeah, all of those things will affect the consciousness. And because again, you're putting these things into your body, and depending on your individual system and how they work with you, will affect your energy field. People who have a lot of chemicals in their field, whether it's through mold or through cigarette smoke or soda or high, chemicals in general, if their system's more sensitive to it, they have a resilience in the energy field that's a little bit less, it doesn't regulate itself as well. I think that people who are moving into a space of awareness of their diet and detoxing their food and their hair and personal products, this is something that takes time, but it's something that really does create a really resilient, radiant energy system. And that's something that we do with our Mind Body Detox program, an individual case by case basis, because what you need is different than what someone else needs. It's not all one size fits all. So this information that I shared today is, I think, really important to share around if you really resonated with this with other people, because this is free. Like, this information could completely change someone's life for the rest of their life. Like, absolutely. Having that awareness, the self-awareness of those stress responses, to not be ashamed of them because we're just freaking animals. And this is the best we're doing. But if we can learn to regulate that, we can change the way we interact with our spouse, the way we might be interacting with our bosses, our world, the electromagnetic field of the heart space that we talked about that can influence and shift others without even having to talk to them. There's a lot of things that we have for self-awareness of how we could be dysregulated and imbalanced or distorted in our energy field, and how that could be reflecting in our reality. And then finally, we talked about in the last slide, how if we are aware of these things, we can absolutely know which modalities might work for us, whether it's body-based, energy-based, nutritional, movement-based, and environmental toxin-based. And those are the things that really we need to shift. And mindset, psychology, those things are also oriented to the mind-body revolution. And when I use that term, I just got really, aware of how much our world is longing for a shift in the healthcare system, because there isn't looking at it from a particular perspective of holistic integrative. It's too complex to treat everyone in a fast-paced nature at the doctors with this particular model. Maybe as we go forward, we'll have more DNA testing to understand personality traits, foods that our bodies work with, environmental toxins that are more challenging for certain people over other people, but it still is not going to solve the problem of self-awareness. No doctor can help you become self-aware. No doctor can help you become more so self-aware that you know what's going on in your body, so you can better communicate it to your healthcare team. And when you can, and you can give them all the pieces of the puzzle, and especially when they are integrative focused or functionally trained, meaning they have this awareness of how holistic model works. They're not just from a chemical perspective of, let me just give you the pill, let me just give you the surgery. Then you can't be mad at that foundation of a system that's happening right now, because that is what we've created collectively. That is what we have done. And now we are really tired of it. At least people who come to see me are tired of it, because they're not getting answers, or the answers are only limited. And sometimes for certain people, that system is exactly what they need at that time. I mean, I just had a surgery a month ago. It was exactly what I needed at that time. It shifted my energy field, shifted my consciousness, shifted my hormone system, because it was such a long-standing problem for me from a many years, like lead poisoning. I shared all different environmental toxins, things I experienced, that no amount of mindset shifting and body work and nutrition, at that point was where I needed to shift, and it was just going to continue to perpetuate till I had this surgery. So I think it's important for us to not fight the old system, because fight, fall, and freeze, right? It's a stress response. To accept the system of allopathic healthcare, to see its place, to continue to educate ourselves, become self-aware, so we can come to our doctors without shame or guilt and say, I got this system, this thing called holistic or integrative health and wellness, and how it sees everything connected. Educate them, because so many doctors are just really also tired of the system. They really want to help people. They want to see changes. But the model that's out there has been created from us wanting a quick fix mentality solution. That's what we've wanted. And sometimes we do want that still. We want someone to just solve all our problems with a pill. We want it to be easy, just as easy as that. Because it's much easier to go, someone give me a pharmaceutical, or, one thing I have to take to change it. And there are absolutely reasons we need that. Mental health reasons, diabetes, we need insulin, we need certain things. But if we have the awareness that that pill model is not going to fix us, because it can't get to the root of why we have emotional dysregulation from a belief system or pattern, or from a food we're eating that's causing inflammation in the brain, or from a longstanding belief, or from tension we're holding in our body, it's not going to fix that. No pill will ever fix that. And that is the, well, I guess the unhappy news for people who still want that reality. But on the light side, the brighter side is that when you realize that and you have this awareness of how much power you have with the choices you make, and you start to see yourself as the creator, the co-creator of your life, the someone who has a power of choice, and you surround yourself with people like myself that have this awareness, you feed yourself with this awareness of empowerment of I have the power to create my life. Life happens through me, not to me. And when you continue to perpetuate that from a grounded perspective, I will just give you that. Please be aware of that, because there are people that love this integrative model. They're so in it. They just jumped in 2 years ago. God bless them. We need them. We need everybody we can get that are practitioners of holistic health, right? But please keep in mind that every person that you will work with, every holistic practitioner, is also on their own journey as a human being. Where they're at, what they have learned and what they have not learned, and how things connect. They might be so focused on the mental health piece or so focused on the fitness piece, and they haven't gotten more pieces of the puzzle and see how they interconnected. They might reject Reiki and energy medicine and think it's weird. It doesn't matter where they're at. It has to resonate with you if you're going to work with someone as a practitioner, and also be aware that they're also human. And if they can deliver to you and share with you the things that they've been through, the things that they've achieved and accomplished, why they can accomplish it, and please have them tell you that they've been through it and they've come to the other side. Because the people that are making the most change in people's individual lives, as a coach, someone like myself, as a healer, as a practitioner of bodywork or integrative medicine, the people that are walking the talk, that have done it themselves and gone through the hard times, the shadow stuff, the fears, those are the ones that had the most outcomes. I guarantee you. I've seen people that are just starting, that I support a lot of them as a holistic business entrepreneur. I help them get to that place where they can find their confidence. They don't block their being seen. They don't block themselves with their perspectives and mindsets and their limitations around money, all the things that come up, right? But if they haven't actually walked the talk and done it yet, they'll start attracting clients that they can help, and it might be you, that you will be an important part of their journey and they'll be an important part of your journey. But please know that once you grow beyond what their skill set is and their experience, you need to move on to someone else. And same thing with them. I've gone through many different coaches that I work with personally that mentor me as I grow and expand my consciousness and my ability to come and present everything I offer. And I think it's important to remember that, because there is a lot of this overcompensation that is totally normal in this arena of holistic wellness and spiritual based practitioners like Reiki healers or psychic readers, and even straight up frauds and bots that try to message you and say they'll give you a psychic reading. There's a lot of boundary crossing, and just don't let that give you a bad taste. Just see it as a human being who's stuck in the fight, flight, fawn, or freeze mode, and maybe they're trying to overcompensate for their lack of confidence in what they do, and that may come off as loud. Confidence is quiet, insecurity is loud. So I will just say that I think it's important, and I want to always guide people to the right person of what they need to work with or who is best for them. But most importantly, if you're working with someone in a holistic way, just make sure it feels right for you. Make sure they're the right person and they can deliver what you're looking for. So what you might be looking for after this is like, what can you do? What's the next steps for you? We have an online community that we are doing a 14-day journey starting today in this inward focus. So I'm asking some more questions that kind of go on top of this. And it's going to be from now until the 31st of January. If you are watching the replay in February, somewhere later on, you can still join our online community. It's Mighty Networks, Firefly Hollow Wellness, Mighty Networks. You can still join it. And this replay video will be on there along with the handouts. And every day we'll have a post, either a video or a journal prompt or an inspirational quote that has some information for going deeper into this stuff, so you can have this deeper sense of self-awareness, so you can really feel solid in tilling your soil, knowing which seeds you're planting, and knowing how to water them and when to water them, so you can really see it grow into a successful, sustainable garden that you can really see the benefit of transformation. Our culture is ready for it. We're ready for this. It's time. It's time for the mind-body revolution. We need to stop thinking of things in pieces. We need to stop thinking of people in other, black and white, us versus them. That is fight consciousness, and we're not going to be able to overcome it and not just in our world from a perspective of systems and how we orient ourselves to other people, but within our own personal health and our own spiritual consciousness and relationship to that. It's all connected. How you orient yourself from out of this animalistic fight, flight, fawn, freeze response through training and with all the other tools that holistic model offers you, that will change the system in the world, in healthcare, in our school system, in how we parent, and how we congregate as a community instead of this isolation and this whole lack of connection and this epidemic of loneliness. There is so much that we have this disconnection from our physical bodies that reflects and mirrors our disconnection from the earth. We don't have connection to the planet, to the earth, to the plants, to the animals. Maybe we love them and watch them on TV, but when people are more oriented to their bodies, they get out of fight, flight, fawn, freeze. They have this desire and hunger to now go out and be in nature and to see how interconnected we are with nature. And this is what I think the wonderful, I'd say unfortunate events that we are having with the weather and change in our systems and fires and hurricanes and all that stuff. It's going to continue to happen on the planet because that's what the planet does. But if we can become more aware of our fellow humans, our fellow plants, animals, how we're all interconnected, we're not going to be able to do that from more consciousness and political parties versus other. It's so much us versus them. And if you're tired of that, you don't need to fight it. You don't need to be here to fight it. We're calling upon a person or individual at this time who is more, I'm going to say this again. At this time in our consciousness as a collective, we are now calling upon a person who is a warrior in their spirit, not fighting against themselves or fighting against other people or trying to evangelize other people with their own spiritual beliefs. Even this could be a belief system that someone orients to. Let people learn on their own, and you can shift the consciousness in the world, not through evangelizing people, just through changing and shifting how you show up with your stress response, down-regulating fight, flight, fawn, freeze, so you can overcome the animal brain. So you can, no matter what your religion or what your belief systems are, whatever you love, your personal hobbies, it will accent all of you and who you believe you are and your identity and your interests. It will just expand upon that, and it ripples out into the way you treat other people, the way you interact, and that has such a huge response in people we need to feel trust with other people. We need to feel seen and heard and belonging. And when you don't feel that within yourself, through all these imbalances that can happen through just the dysregulated stress response in our stories, our history, it is now a time for us to, if we feel still that fight, we want to have war with anything, let's shift that consciousness. Instead of war, instead of fight, let's use the word challenge instead, but challenge with and combined with the concept of fun. Wouldn't it be fun to be challenged every day, that every time you get into a stress response, through different tools and techniques you learn, you can downregulate and feel more in control of your life? Wouldn't it be fun to not only challenge yourself and do that every day, but then show other people through example that can happen and be true for them too? Wouldn't it be fun and to see everybody else as an object, as a partner in this consciousness journey that's helping you wake up, that's helping you to become better? Just like Ram Dass says, we're all walking each other home. We're all here in this journey until we can get to that space, which Ram Dass and some of these spiritual teachers operated from that space of consciousness. It's very clear that other people don't get that. And they're not going to get it because that part of the brain, that's an actual physical part of our physiology, is not oriented to be on. And when it's not on and we're fight, flight, fawn, freeze, we're not going to have these states of consciousness that we're going to experience. And when you're in that state of consciousness, there is no fighting. Everything is exactly the way it is. I choose to, in most of my daily life, to be now reoriented into my heart, into heart coherence, into joy, into compassion, into everything's happening for a reason. But I often find myself, like in this presentation, when I'm speaking to other people that aren't in that state of consciousness yet, I have this passion, this fire, and you could say that expression or concept of fight, the spiritual warrior, comes out of me to inspire, to uplift, to motivate. But for the most part, it's just all good. It's all a space of peace. And I think that that turns on in me when I'm connecting with others and giving them some alternative perspectives. Because most of the time, the reality is, if you're in fight, flight, fawn, freeze, and you're in that stress response, you're not going to relate to or hear someone who's an enlightened being who's walking around in a space of joy and peace. You may perceive them with resentment or anger or fear or just complete bewilderment. And how is that person so happy when there's so much stuff going on in the world that's bad? You won't get it. It won't make sense, right? You won't relate at all. And because you won't relate at all, you won't even see it as possible for yourself. And because of that, that's why I move into the space of spiritual warrior. In order for me to connect with people in fight, flight, fawn, or freeze, the people who I am here to disseminate this information to support in some way, I move into that state of consciousness with you. Now, most of the time, my love and my joy to be in a state of consciousness of peace and fun and play, that's where I'm at. And that is absolutely available for anyone. And it does not mean that I don't have stress in my life. Trust me, I have an 18-year-old who's transitioned to be an adult, and a lot of the things running a holistic business with many different healers that are going through their own stress responses. It doesn't mean that I can't have fun and play, be at a place of peace, and know that I'm fully sourced and resourced by source, that it comes through me through the inspiration of how I orient myself, how I orient my patterns, my goals, and how they're structured, and also to learn from everything, that I'm always still learning. And that's really the magic. So I'm here to share that with all of you, and the online community spaces where you can connect with me and others in a deeper way who are really looking to step into this type of consciousness. And that's what this year's about. Staying around the type of consciousness that you really want to be around and be like. This doesn't mean judging or rejecting other people for where they're at or saying you're at a lower level of consciousness. That's still fight consciousness. It's completely accepting others where they're at, seeing them as they're on their own individual journey, and you're also here with them and they're teaching you something as well. Even though they're individually on their journey, they're still a part of yours in some way, and it's still a oneness, it's still a collective consciousness. So if you have any more interest in joining us for this 14-day challenge, let us know. You're able to join directly through the Mighty Networks. And then in February, we're going to be starting up our Mind Body Detox beta test program. Again, the program's been on since 2013. We love it. It's a great way to take all this system of stuff I've just talked about and give you step-by-step ways to get through your patterns, your programs, change your energy field, change the body, work with some food and recipes and smoothies and things that might start you off on your path. And then you can, of course, customize things that are really uniquely individualized for you when you work one-on-one. But the program is really geared to go through with some really great foundational tools to, again, continue to solidify the awareness of what holistic is, and then really go from there. I'm really excited about the beta test program. We used to do this program with only people in person, a group of 12, and we would go through it 8 weeks time. And this new model is anyone from anywhere in the world can join us. And the monthly group focus is going to be on one particular focus so that we can have bite-sized pieces that make it sustainable, whatever we're doing. And the first month for February is going to be sustainable self-care to create sustainable change. So that is the first foundation for people, that they try to jump ahead to the planning and the discipline and the work. But as I shared earlier, if you have the idea of what you want to do and your goal, and you figure out if it's really truly who you are and what you want to do, and it's your authentic goal, you got to get foundationally resourced with giving and receiving and having a self-care routine that feels really good. So we're going to give some tools as a massage therapist and as an energy healer with advanced energy medicine techniques that you can do at home, and meditations, journal prompts, all that stuff, yoga, Kundalini yoga. We're going to incorporate that into a whole month of foundationally giving you pieces so that you can support your journey. And then each month we'll go into a different part of the energy field. So it's going to be something that we'll be launching in February. If you are interested in that, you can sign up for our newsletter list. And you can sign up for that in our link tree. So have a wonderful rest of your weekend, everybody, and we'll see you in the online community.